All right, so I will then hand it over to the fantastic Catherine Catmull, who is the author of The Radiant Road and the co-authors of The Cabinet of Curiosities and Summer and Bird, one of my favorite books. All right, so thank you. I'm going to switch off my audio and my video, but I will be in the background. And if I need to come back on, I'll switch on the audio and video at that time, but I will be on the chat with you guys.
Before you switch off, remind me of the name of your book. I can't believe I forgot it. It's a wonderful book, you guys, which I not only read, but also blurbed. I really adored it.
She did, yes.
One of the reasons why I love it. I knew it was the boy,
the bird and the beast, which came out on paperback today.
Yay. So congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, I am signing off.
Yep, you're off. I'm here all alone now. I just wanted to add, in case it's useful to anybody, when I first did Zoom, people kept talking about, you know, the mute button and the chat button and the video button. And I was like, I don't see those. You have to like actually scroll to the bottom. Most of you, I'm sure, know this, but just in case there's any silent person out there who doesn't, if you just like run your cursor down, they will appear at the bottom of this black screen underneath me. You'll see the chat button and you can do everything that Sam was just saying. Thank you very much for coming. I'm very excited about this. I love this class, which is about revising. I love revising, actually. The counterpart of that is that I really hate drafting. So I am like the slowest writer in the Western world. But it means that I also enjoy being a freelance editor and stuff. And so this class is kind of a like jammed together, extremely condensed compendium of everything I have learned about writing, both from being a writer myself and from editing other people's manuscripts. So that allows me to see what mistakes everybody is making, or at least most people are making, and talk about those. So first off, how many of you guys have a first draft? Just type in me in the chat box if you do, like a completed first draft. And if you don't, what are you doing here? No, I'm just kidding. If you don't, that's okay. Me, look at that. Look at all those me's. For those of you who don't, look, you can do it. Partial is fine. Almost. That's awesome. Half a first draft, almost 80,000 words. Although, you know, I've got 60,000 words on a draft. It's about a third done, meaning I'm going to have a lot of cutting to do at some point. But yeah, and short stories too. Well done, you guys. Well done, you guys. Finishing a first draft is unbelievably hard. So if you have done it, you can just consider yourself a king or a queen. I am very serious. I think it is one of the hardest things I have done in my life. And a lot of people don't make it all the way. So if you haven't, just push through. I know it is hard, but like 70% of what you learn about writing from writing a book, you learn from finishing. It's like the finishing is just like crammed with difficulty and lessons and things you learn. So go ahead and finish. It'll level you up like about 15 levels as a writer just to finish. And then you get to revise, which is the fun part for me, not for other people, and not always for me, to be absolutely frank. There are times when it's like you're sitting it's like you're sitting in, your book is a car, and you're sitting on the floor of your writing room with the car in like pieces all around you, and you're trying to put them back together in a way that will make the car run, and it does not seem like that will ever happen. But it does. It does. All right, I'm going to try screen sharing. I was having some trouble with this. Let's see. All right, now I'm going to put it in. All right, Sam, let me know if this isn't working. I'm under the impression you can see this. What we're looking at is stack of some of the notebooks that went into writing my first book, Summer and Bird, and then my all three of my books. So it's just to show you that can happen, that big mess of scrawls and sticky notes and doodles. My notebooks have tons of doodles, perhaps yours do too, that you kind of type in badly and then you have to read. Anyway, it can turn into book, and it's very exciting that can happen. So let's see. Oh, there you go. How do professionals do it? And the answer is they get a ton of help. They have a whole series of editors who help them. In fact, sometimes I teach a revision class to kids, and I always say, I have this little jokey series of, when I finished the first draft, was I finished? And they're like, no, you had to revise it. And then I revised it. Was I done? Yes, no. Then I gave it to my friends to read, a couple friends to read, and they gave me notes, and then I revised it. And then was I done? And it goes through, then sending to my agent and getting his notes, then getting his second set of notes, then it's sold, huge moment, and then getting my editor's edit, and then then I'm not done that. I mean, it's never really done. And the punchline of that long story, which I won't bore you with because you can just imagine, that goes from, story editor to line editor to copy editor to proofreader. And then I opened my first book, and the very first copy I had in my hands, and I opened it immediately to a typo. So don't hold yourself to unreasonable standards. There's typos and stuff in every book, and there's things you'll find in books that you'll wish you had fixed. It's never going to be perfect, but that's okay. Oop. I can't see. Oh, this dang thing is, here we go. There are, there we go. The first edit is the story edit. It's big picture edits. If you're actually at, a publishing house, a traditional publishing house, probably a chunk of your advance hangs on you finishing the story edit to the contentment of your editor. Because if you don't, then they still have the right to reject the book. Then there's the line edit, and then there's the copy edit, which is done by somebody completely different and who will save you in a million ways. And then they set it in proofs, just like it's going to look in the book. And at that point, they do a proofing edit, because you lose a lot of things in the fitting it for the book. And we're going to focus on the first two and do a quick, especially the story edit, which is, to me, by far the most difficult. And we'll do a quick nod to copy edits, which is something that you can outsource. So if you're not good at grammar and spelling and punctuation, there are millions of writers who are wonderful writers who aren't good at those things. And so don't worry about it. It's something you can outsource. All right, the story edit is the hardest, so we will spend the most time on it. And I hope you guys appreciate this. I went through and got one of the most traumatic emails I have ever received, which was my edit letter on my first book. It was primarily traumatic, partly because, here we go. This is it was 30 pages of this. I've just highlighted a few, especially painful things. My editor, Julie Strauss-Gable, is so famous for being a tough editor that the New York Times did a story, put her on the cover of their business section about this. Brilliant kid lit editor who makes her writers cry, but that makes them good. And there were quotes from her other writers, and I was like, yep, that's about it, where they'd say you get one of her letters and you cry, and then you realize you're not a writer. And then the next day you realize, I think I am a writer, but I don't think I can write this book. And then the third day you're like, I'm going to try. And then you tackle it. You will not be able to write yourself a letter as harsh and devastating as this first email that I got from Julie. I will say it was harsh and devastating, but it was useful, and it made it a far better book. Right, so it's big structural changes. We're not looking really at the words that much, except in a sort of general way. Agony, ecstasy, yeah, it's mostly agony, at least with Julie it was. Yeah, one thing she said was, the place you're killing your villain is really wrong in the story, and she had some good reasons, and so I had to figure out, when you're writing a book, you put everything together, it's like this delicate Jenga puzzle. Talk about just knocking it all on the floor. Now it's you need to kill your villain a lot earlier, so in a whole different way, in a whole different point in the book. I needed to cut a whole major character who, she didn't put it this way, but she was right. This character really mostly existed to speak exposition and to help my little heroines out of trouble, which is not interesting to a book reader. You want the heroines to get into trouble. And Basil Exposition, that's a character from Austin Powers movies. I don't know if it's the Michael Caine character where he'd come on and just explain things. So I had to cut this major character that was carrying all of the exposition and solving some really crucial plot problems. So that was also very hard. Oh yeah, and then she felt rightly that the main characters did not have enough of a direct hand in solving the problems at the end, at the climax. Their mother was kind of swooping in and handling some of that in a beautifully tragic way, I thought, but they were right. So I also had to rewrite the entire climax. It was very hard, but it made it a much better book, a book I'm very proud of. So what you're going to do in your story edit, and this is, you finished your first draft, is you're going to write your own story letter, your own edit letter. You're going to be your own Julie Strauss Gable. And it's hard. It's hard. You got to be tough on yourself. Go in with a tough mindset. If it's not working, you've got to admit it to yourself. This is probably only going to work if you take some time between drafting and revising. And people often are really reluctant to do this. And I understand, because when you're finishing a book, you get a big, you're on a roll, you know, you're like, I'm doing it. And you finish it. And then you want to keep going. When I finished my first draft, I was like, I just wandered around the house. I didn't know what to do with myself. I had been pushing so hard to get that done. And I did want to jump right into revisions, but a couple of people, writers I knew, had told me, don't do that. And it was very good advice. I think the longer you can wait, the better. Like if you can wait a couple of months, that would be great. But I would not even consider waiting less than 2 weeks, because you have got to have some distance. You have got to be able to see the writing kind of fresh. Take that time. I think it makes a huge difference to print it out. In fact, I splurge with my books. I splurge and take it to like FedEx Kinko's or something, and have them printed out and spiral bind it so that I've got a book I'm holding in my hand and that I'm marking up like crazy. If you see a problem and you don't instantly know how to solve it, just note the problem and move on, you know, and you can just write, fix this, it's dull. You will later come to hate your past self who wrote, fix this, it's dull. You'll be like, why didn't you fix it? Why are you leaving it for me to fix? But sometimes that's the best you can do. If you don't have an idea, push on. Maybe keep maybe keep a notebook or a laptop nearby if you have a longer notes or like a big idea that you don't want to like write in the margins. Whatever works. But that's what I do. You might also consider keeping a calendar or a spreadsheet nearby, like a calendar spreadsheet, and track movements in time, because that's the kind of thing that when you're drafting, you can get really sloppy about. Like if you have people who if you're following more than one character, like your hero's doing one thing and your villain is doing another thing, you want to make sure that the time is tracking correctly. Like day one, hero's doing this, villain's doing this. Day two, just make it that close. Like make sure that it's working. When I finished my first book, I realized I was putting moons in completely randomly. Like if I needed a full moon so that they could see at night, then there was a full moon. And if I needed a dark moon so they couldn't see and it was dark and scary, then I had a dark moon. But I had to go back and like figure out how many days they'd spent and whether they could have a full moon or a dark moon. I had to like make it all make sense. And then anyway, so that's why the calendar is spreadsheet. And you may not have that kind of book. Not everybody does, but a lot of people do. So it's the moon thing, the calendar, it's really important in this big revision. But how do you do it? What do you look for? So story edits are going to address pacing and flow, right? Like, is it well paced? Is it exciting to read? Do you want to keep turning the page? I guess sometimes something could be too exciting to read, but that's not usually the case. You're looking at characters and the conflict the characters are in and the goals that the characters have, and whether the characters change. We're going to talk about each of these things in turn, but just to give you a quick overview. Point of view is a really important one, and one that I see a lot in the manuscripts I edit, from just little slips to quite big ones. And a wavering point of view is something that agents and editors, like, that's a huge red flag for them. You need to have your point of view absolutely locked down, because it's funny, you know, I was just reading that, come on up, bud. Sorry, my cat's complaining down there. I was reading that, that agents get like 10s of thousands of queries a year. So they're looking for reasons to be able to just look at it and go, no, no. Oddly, at the same time, they're also looking for reasons to be like, yes, yes, because they really want, you know, they're looking for that book, the book that they're going to be able to sell. But they're also looking for reasons to just move on to the next one, move on to the next one. And if your point of view is wavering, that is a big red flag that will get you kicked out right away. So we'll talk about that, but get that locked down. Dialogue issues, we'll talk about those. Exposition issues, which I definitely often have, which means that I have, sorry, I hope you guys don't mind that my cat's here, but at least I can't, if you're allergic to him, it won't bother you over the video. I have problems with exposition because I struggle so much with making my exposition flow naturally, and using it as something to make readers turn pages, as opposed to making them stop reading because you just told me a really boring bunch of information that I don't want. I have thought about it a lot. So if you have issues with that, you've come to the right place, because I can talk to you about it. And world building issues is the last one. So we are going to take them one at a time. Pace and flow. So while you're reading, while you're doing your big story edit, come here, bud, sit down here. Look for the parts that you want to skip or skim. Those are the dull parts. And that sounds really obvious, but I will tell you, when I'm reading my books, I don't think they're the dull parts. I think I mean, I've worked on that part so much. I know it really well. You know, I'm not going to, there's really no point in me rereading it, or, I mean, I'm lying to myself when I say that, because there's parts of my books that I love to reread. I love this super exciting part where my villain gets killed in my first book, where all these birds like swirl up through her castle and carry her off. And anyway, it's very exciting to me, that part. But cat, Adam, come sit down. Come sit down. So if there are parts that you're reading and you want to skip or skim, mark them. I need to look at this, it's dull. And figure out why. And we'll talk about some reasons it might be dull. Look for whether it's pacey where it needs to be. One of the places it needs to be pacey, by the way, is at the end in your big climax. You're going to need a lot. It just needs to be driving forward. But you know, you want pace in plenty of places, and then occasionally you want to give the reader a break and slow down, let everybody catch their breath. So make sure you've got that ebb and flow, those arcs. And again, yeah, reality check. There are very few books whose problem is it's just too heart-stoppingly fast-paced. So it's more likely, if you've got any issues, that your issues are that you've got some dull, slow bits where it's somehow not activated. There's something that's not, there's no conflict that's engaging the reader. And we'll talk about ways to fix that. But that's what you're, dang it. I am so sorry. I don't know why he's being such a jerk. All right. So ask each scene, are you moving the story forward? Scene, are you moving the story forward? What are you doing to move the story forward? And are you doing it in a fun and exciting, useful way? Or scene, if you're not doing that, are you at least showing us something important about the character? I mean, ideally it's doing both, but sometimes you can slow it down a little bit and just have a scene that's kind of developing character a little bit. If your answer is, well, no, but this scene builds the world, or I'm providing backstory here, that is not enough. Building the world and providing backstory can only happen in the context of moving the story forward, or developing character a little bit. So interrogate your scenes. Be, a policeman. Shine the light bulb in the scene's face and make sure it's doing these things as you're reading it. More strategies. I learned this from, I don't even like South Park, but I learned this from those South Park guys, Matt Stone and Trey Parker. I read an interview with them where they said that they frequently got scripts that weren't working as scripts for them and that people submitted. And they began to realize that a lot of people don't seem to understand, and so probably was one of them, that a story can't be then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. There has to be a very specific relationship between the events in a story, and that relationship is but so. I started teaching an online class that I was very excited to teach, but my cat decided to walk back and forth in front of me, amusing everybody. So I tried to anxiously laugh and pet him and get him calmed down so that I would look more professional. But he wasn't buying that and started whining into this is the story. I play a game sometimes with kids when I'm teaching a writing workshop where we play, it's an improv game called Fortunately, Unfortunately. You can play this game endlessly. What's hard about it is finishing it in a satisfying way, which for those of you who are just now finishing a draft is it's hard in the exact same way that it is hard to finish a draft. But fortunately, unfortunately is where you go around the room and somebody starts out saying, fortunately, I woke up early this morning, and the next person says, unfortunately, it wasn't early enough. I'd already missed the bus to school. Fortunately, my mom said she could drive me. Unfortunately, so you just keep like saving your hero and ruining your hero. Save your hero, ruin your hero. Give your hero has to keep thinking of ways around the roadblocks. That is one of look for the but so's in your overall story and also for each scene. See what they're going after and what's getting in the way and what strategies they come up with to get around them. Scene instead of summary can often be a problem in a book, and we will talk about that more later. Another one is if there's you've come to a dull chunk and you're thinking, how can I fix it? Is look and see whether there's a big blob of undigested exposition just sitting there being inert and not helping the pace or the story in any way. But there are ways to make exposition work for you, to make it page turny, as opposed to I don't know what the opposite of page turning is, book closing. So we'll talk about that as well. One of the ways for fixing these is to up the stakes for the characters. So now we'll talk about characters a little bit. Oops, excuse me. Clear stakes. Make sure that the reader that you understand first, and then that the reader understands what the main character's stakes are. Like, we need to know what we're rooting for to be really obvious about it. And it may change. I mean, if you think of Frodo's does not like start that book being all, I wish somebody give me a ring to throw in a mountain, to throw in a volcano. So the stakes can shift, but pretty early on, you're going to establish the story stakes, the thing that when it's achieved or not achieved, we will know means the story is over. Sam, you just popped on.
Yes. There's two quick questions that
Yeah,
I
I'm
thought
totally
you
up for
might
that.
want to answer. One of them was a while ago, but I thought this might be a good time since there's one more. One was when your first draft is on paper and pen, and the other one is defining exposition.
Oh, okay, great. Those are both great questions. Thank you. When your first draft is on paper with pen, then you're writing exactly the way Neil Gaiman does. If any of you know who he is, he's a pretty well-known sort of fantasy writer. He wrote Good Omens, which is on Amazon Prime right now with Terry Pratchett, and he wrote American Gods, which has been a TV series, and he wrote Coraline, that you might have seen the movie. Anyway, he writes all of his first drafts on paper, and then he says that typing them in is his second draft. That as he types in, he looks for all these problems that we're talking about and fixes it that way. I've always thought that sounded super cool. But I actually do draft story that way. In a notebook, I find that writing with pen and paper, I don't know, it's just different somehow from typing. I don't know if that's because I'm old enough that I didn't grow up like keyboarding everything in, but I think there's actually something, it gets more of your whole body involved, and I don't know, jostles up your brain more or something. I can get deeper. I can write more viscerally when I'm handwriting. So, and I can solve problems while I'm handwriting in a way that I cannot solve problems while I'm typing. But I'm not really writing, like I'll just write a scene, and it'll often the first draft of it will sound kind of like a 7-year-old telling you the plot of a movie that you just watched with the 7-year-old. If you know any 7-year-olds, I don't know what it is about 7 that they want to do that. They'll be like, oh yeah, and then so that's what it reads like to me. Yeah, and then the lady goes up the stairs, and oh, I forgot to say she has this magic cup with her, and then she throws open the door, and then she like throws the cup at the guy, and then she runs away. I mean, just you know what I mean? It's like very, very bare skeleton-y. The story writer in my head is apparently like about 7 years old. But after that, I type in. But that's more than you need to know. The answer to your question is, do like Neil Gaiman, I say, and make your typing in, turn that into your second draft. The other question was about, exposition. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. And I'm sure other people are wondering too. I should have defined it. Exposition is anything the reader needs to know that is sort of like backstory or world building. Like at some point, in my second book, there's a little girl, a young woman who was born in Ireland, but then her mother died when she was quite young, and she and her dad like traveled all over the world, and now they've come back to Ireland. She's 14, and their house, which was in her mother's family for like 1,000 years, is this weird house under a hill made of stone with a yew tree growing right up through it. She remembers, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I used to go into this crack in this yew tree, and she still fits. And she meets a guy there, and he has like a whole thing he needs to tell her about, oh yeah, well, there's 2 worlds, there's human and fairy, and they connect, and you come into our world of fairy when you dream, and we go into your world to make art, and there's a bridge between them that this tree is part of, and there's a bad guy who's trying to break the bridge. Like that is all exposition. That is somehow I need to give that information to the reader, and like how fairy works, and like the kid has a long backstory about like how he was born. All of that is exposition. I mean, sometimes when we get to the exposition, I'll mention a character. There's a Tom Stoppard play called The Real Inspector Hound, which is kind of a parody of plays and theater critics. And in the play within a play, there's a character named Mrs. Drudge, who's the maid, and she carries all the exposition in a really awkward way. Like she picks up the phone, the phone rings and she picks it up and says, hello, Catmull Mansion, one warm spring morning in early June. Like that's a very awkward, hilariously awkward way of handling exposition. I hope that answered the question. We'll talk about it more though, so it should be clear more. The problem is you tend to, if you're like me, you tend to want to like, here, let me tell you everything about fairy and stuff, because you're going to enjoy the book a whole lot more once you know all this stuff, but it doesn't work that way. But we'll get to that later. We'll get to that later. Right now we're talking about characters, giving them very clear stakes. That the Lord of the Rings would not be fun to read if we didn't really quite get what he was going to try to do with the ring or why, right? So make it that clear in your book. The risk of what they have to lose, is that the stakes? Or is it what they could win? Is that the stakes? I'm actually really interested in this. I think in life, you can often divide people up into one kind or the other. I like to ask people if they just turn on a baseball game and they don't know either team. This won't work if you know nothing about baseball, but if you don't know either team, do you immediately identify with the batter or with the pitcher? And I think most people identify with the batter. And the batter is somebody who's like, you know, I'm probably going to strike out 2 or 3 times, but, you know, if I hit this ball just right, it's going to be so amazing. Everybody's going to be so happy. I can get all these guys home. We'll win the game. But I automatically identify with the pitcher, the relief pitcher especially. I wish I didn't, but I do. And the relief pitcher's problem is I have to do this very difficult job extremely perfectly. They're like a bomb diffuser, you know? I have to get this, I have like a millimeter, you know, of wiggle room here about where I put this ball so that this guy can't hit it, so that nothing bad happens. And something bad happening in this case would be the guy hitting a home run or whatever. So what's motivating your character? It is probably a risk, or what could they lose or what could they gain? I would argue Frodo is doing it for what he could lose, right? Like the whole world could be eaten by evil or whatever. So it's not like he's going to win and be super happy at the end. He really isn't, but he did like save the world. So high stakes. You got to make the stakes high, and this is on you. It's not on the stakes. You could have, you know, life or death stakes. And if you don't write it correctly, nobody will care. The reader just won't care. But on the other hand, a 6th grade science fair could be the most important stakes in the world. There's that Jonathan Franzen book, The Corrections, the mother is feeling really obsessed with getting all the kids together, and none of them are interested in getting together. But to her, it's incredibly important. And he establishes it really well, like why it's really important to her. In the middle grade science fair, the way you could make it everything, there's a bunch of ways. I would, if we were doing this as a real class, I'd be like asking, like, raise your hand and tell me some ways. But like, it could be, if I win, my crush will finally see me and love me if I win the science fair, because my crush is the biggest science nerd in the world. Or if I win, my rival will shut up once and for all, or stop torturing and bullying me. Or if I win, my mother will shut up and leave me alone and stop thinking my sister is better. Or if I win, my parents will send me to space camp. They promised, and that is my biggest dream. Or if I win, I'll prove that people of my race aren't stupid the way you think. There's just like a million ways that you can make a 6th grade science fair be everything, or make life and death be kind of boring. So just make sure you turn up the stakes and make them something that the reader can relate to. Character arcs. The arc of the character, we kind of perceive the world the same way. These are musical terms: attack, sustain, release. But it's like striving in humans. In story, it's like striving, getting. dissolve, right? It's the classic thing you learned in 4th grade or whatever, of the rising action, the climax, and the falling action. It's just somehow it's the way human beings understand the world. So check and make sure that you've got that, and make sure it's rising. And it should happen again, macro and micro in your story. It should be happening in the whole arc of the book, and then in the arc of each scene. Yeah, all right, I just said that. All right, consistency. Are they behaving in a way that makes sense for who you have established that they are? Are they behaving in a way, if they don't, because as I'm about to say here, they should also surprise us. So can they surprise us in a way that deepens our understanding without confusing us? Do they surprise themselves sometimes? I actually find that character is not the biggest problem, at least in the manuscripts that I look at. Most people seem to know, how to write characters. But it's important to look for these things, and especially look for the surprises, I think. If there's anything missing, it might be that. And I know it's it seems irritating that I'm saying have consistency and also surprise us, but I mean, it's part of that whole back and forth of I mean, you can't have consistency without an occasional surprise. They kind of work together. I know the character is complex. You often hear people say they need to have some flaws because flaws are relatable, and that's true. And don't write a Mary Sue. I'm sure many of you know what a Mary Sue is, but in case you don't, that is a name it came out of fan fiction, I believe, originally, or was applied to characters in fan fiction, where obviously the writer had just put themselves in, and it was somebody wrote a parody of certain kinds of Star Trek fan fiction, in which Mary Sue, at age 14, she was the youngest lieutenant in Starfleet, and anyway, she does everything perfectly. Everyone's very nice to her. She's a genius. It's just that's not interesting. That's like a fantasy. There's that show, Extras. It's a Ricky Gervais show, a British import, I think. Anyway, in the show, he was a guy who'd play an extra on various movies, and there was always a famous actor, that was in this alleged movie within a TV show. And one time the famous actor was Patrick Stewart, and he goes in to playing himself, or a version of himself, and Ricky Gervais goes in to give him a script, say, "Yeah, I've written a script. I thought you might I hope I can give it to you. Maybe you'll read it." And he and Patrick Stewart's super nice about it, and he says he's writing a script too. You should look up the clip sometime, Patrick Stewart in Extras. I think it's so hilarious, and it seems like I read so many books like this, where Patrick Stewart starts talking about his idea, his script, and in his script, it's the fantasy of a 11-year-old, or maybe a 12 or 13-year-old boy, because it's yeah, in my script, I mean, it's Patrick Stewart, so he's talking like this, and in my, and I won't try to do that in front of Sam, but in my script, I can control the world with my mind, and so I use it to make women's clothes fall off. So I'm riding on my bicycle, and some policewoman says, hey, you're riding on the grass, you can't. And so I look at her, and all her clothes fall off. That's the punchline of everything that happens in his script, is that and then all her clothes fall off. It's you need to, all our stories are all come out of our daydreams and fantasies, but you need to process the fantasy into something interesting. Obviously nobody's writing a book that's why that's a joke in the Ricky Gervais show, but you need to process the fantasy. You can't have a Mary Sue. You need to process it and stick it up against reality and give it some problems. I hope this is all making sense. Right, so flaws are relatable, but they're also interesting. They're also surprising, that surprise that I was asking for. They create delicious and useful obstacles, because the obstacles do not always have to be external obstacles, in my little But so my cat was an external obstacle towards me looking like a professional here. But it could also be internal obstacles, like I'm a, you know, like, well, I have a phobia about speaking in public, or I have, I really hate, you know, phobia is not really a flaw exactly, but I'm trying to think of like some kind of like anger, or like being a little too cocky or something. If you're too cocksure of yourself, you can easily make a bad mistake. So yeah, so real flaws too, not fake flaws. I was reading a manuscript when I wrote this. I was just finished a manuscript where this woman was this main character, it's a pretty cool book, but the main character was really getting on my nerves because she was so beautiful and so brilliant and so, and she was a runner, like, she was always like forgetting to eat, and she would just like run things off. And so she was like brilliant, incredibly thin and fit. And I could tell that they were trying to, like, the author was trying to slip a flaw in. And so she would go, I'm just so slender and fit that my breasts aren't as big as some guys like. I was just like, no, sorry, you're gonna have to do better than that. If you want me to relate to this woman, show me. And actually I'm working with that author now, and in her mind, she never got it on the page, but she has some amazing, beautiful, screwed up flaws from having been severely abused as a child. And I'm like, we gotta get some of that on the page. Not that she needs to like recount the abuse unless she wants to, but I mean, just get what the flaws are that come out of that. I keep saying flaws, but you know, it's really just complexity. All right. Sam, stop me if there's any questions I should be addressing.
There are a couple things.
Yeah.
Britta's asked if we could go back to the character arc slide.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary has a question. So yes, I get that they need to behave in an expected way. However, I thought you needed to show growth and change.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Yeah. Yeah, that should definitely be part of the arc. And I think it just naturally becomes part of the arc. The growth and change does. If you, is this the slide that we wanted to be on? Sam, keep an eye on, see if I was supposed to put it on a different slide than this.
I think so.
Okay. I think the growth and change happens naturally. The more you, you know, the famous line about you need to put your main character up a tree and then throw rocks at them. The more you throw rocks at them, the more you throw obstacles and force them to think of ways around the obstacles, the more that growth and change will just naturally happen. At least that's how it works for me. Yeah. So yes, that's a great point, and it should be in here. Hopefully all that but so it creates growth in the character. So they're learning something in the things that they initially solve, and that makes them solve the next things differently. They've learned lessons. Yeah.
Kat, can you go back one?
Oops, this one? No.
No, go back to the character arcs, but you only had 2 of the bullets up.
There we go.
There we go. Just let them see that 3rd bullet for a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Like another example of a flaw that's not a flaw is like some guy who's like such an amazing warrior, he just can't stop himself from helping people, and you know, and that's my flaw. That's not a flaw. Give them something interesting. Give them some beautiful complexity that becomes an obstacle. Obstacles are just like your best friends when you're writing. I swear they are. Okay, yeah, no fake flaws. The power of details. Probably most of you have worked with like where you try to like you're working on your character and you try to like describe them in a really big detail, you know, things that you're not necessarily going to use in the book, but you want to know, like, how did she do in school in 1st grade, you know, that kind of question. The power is not just what the details tell the readers, but it's what they tell you. There's a playwright, he used to be, until recently actually, he was the director of playwriting at the University of Texas. His name's Stephen Dietz. he gives a really excellent playwriting workshops that helped me finish my first book, in fact. And he says that he asks this question about characters. And, you know, if you've been working on a book, if you have a main character, I bet if you stop right now, just stop right now and write down, take like 30 seconds and write down what's in your character's pocket. And if they don't have pockets, you know, whatever. What would they carry in their pockets if they did have a pocket? A pocket is just such an intimate little place to carry things. It's stuff that you don't, it's stuff that you need. I need this stuff. All right. Other questions that can spark things sometimes are like, what's on their playlist today? If you're feeling kind of stuck in a scene, you don't know what your character's doing, or they seem like they're just laying there on the page dead, you know, pick a playlist that they would have picked that day. And how does that song make them feel and why? And see if that gets you moving at all. Comfort food. I have to think about that for my characters sometimes too. I love that pocket question. This were a real class, I would love to hear what was in the pockets of your characters. I did this with, not a real class, you know what I mean, a live class. I did this with some middle grade students, and they all had such fascinating answers. It was just a delight. In fact, let's see. Give me
They can put it in the chat if you want.
Yeah, put it in the chat. Put what's in your character's pockets. Just a couple of the things in there. I'd just love to see it go by.
Kat, do you have the chat open?
I do. I just opened
Okay.
it.
Okay, good.
All right, new messages. They're empty. Ooh, that is interesting. Her mother's compass necklace. I feel like I start knowing these characters just for knowing this. A lighter his friend stole and gave to him. Love that. Rock from Israel. Fish hook, pretty rock. Use spark plug. Oh man, dirty string. That's awesome. And Derringer. Dang. Idea cards. Index cards where he writes down his thoughts. That's fantastic. I love that. One hitter. All right. She doesn't have pockets. Women's pants. You know, you can find women's pants with pockets. You just have to be determined. I guess what does she carry in her purse, I'd ask them, but it's not quite as intimate as pockets. Extra hair ties and mitts for friends. Notebook and pen. Clorox cleanup wipes. That's great. It's a writer who's also a serial killer. Handkerchief and colored pencils. McDonald's old style French fries. That's a good comfort food. Yep. A pocket could be their secret heart. Oh, that's lovely. A mermaid necklace holding a diamond that her mother, whom she's never met, gave her. Pack of gum. Quite like the simplicity of that. Oh, but you won't wear it. Yeah, these are lovely. Oops. I was trying to shrink it. Instead, I made it huge. Thank you, you guys. I loved reading those. And we got to stop listening to my voice for a little bit, which I think is nice. Point of view. All right. As I was saying before, wavering in point of view is just one of the worst things you can do in terms of scaring off agents and editors who would otherwise love your book. So let's take a look at that. So point of view, just to make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about, point of view is the it's like the mind or the lens, the mind you're telling the story through. So the most common points of view choices these days are first person. That's especially common in YA, if any of you guys are writing that. But, you know, there's all kinds of books that are written in first person. And that's the I voice, right? Excuse me. Where it's all, you know what the main character is seeing and you know what the main character is thinking. And everything's in the main character's voice. third person close is, or sometimes called third person limited, is very much like first person, in that you're in one person's mind and you're limited to only what that one character can see or know, but you're not limited to their voice, which is nice. For example, if you are like me and want to get like fancy with your description, sometimes would you have a 12-year-old who would not talk that way? I can describe the tree she's seeing as, you know, I was going to say beautifully, and then I was like, I don't want to say that about my own writing, as lyrically as just, you know, overwroughtly as I want to, because I'm writing third person. Whereas if I were in first person, I'd be stuck in the way she would describe it. Those are the two most common ones now. Alternating third person close is also something you'll see fairly often. I have a friend who writes detective novels set in Tokyo, and she alternates between the perspective of this young woman and her boyfriend, who's a detective, and she's always getting, you know, like mixed up in his cases, like a chapter, you know, a chapter for her, a chapter for him, a chapter for her, a chapter for him, like that. Those are the most common choices these days. Less common choices these days include omniscient. A lot of old books are written in omniscient point of view. That's where your narrator knows everything in time and space, knows what everybody is thinking, knows what's going to happen. Omniscient point of view is very difficult to control. So unless you're feeling lucky, are you feeling lucky? It might not be a good choice, but maybe you're already writing in omniscient. And if you are, the one thing I would say is to be sure to, an omniscient narrator typically has a point of view, even though they're not a person. Like, they have a voice. They have, they're telling the story for a reason. They're directing your attention into this character's head and that character's head. My first book was written in omniscient point of view, mostly because I didn't know that that was really hard to do, and unusual these days. I just wanted to write that kind of book. And I was lucky that I guess I pulled it off well enough to get that book sold, but it's hard. Third person objective is pretty rare. I don't know if you know that Hemingway's story, Hills Like White Elephants. An objective, third person objective, just describes the outside. So you never get to see inside somebody's head, like what somebody's thinking or feeling. But Hills Like White Elephants is a really brilliant story. And it's also, if you haven't read it, just Google it. I'm sure it's online. I know it's online, in fact. It's a unbelievably brilliant use of dialogue. Or if you're interested in third person objective point of view, if you want to see what that would be like. And then sometimes people mix it. I always think this is crazy, but I mean, people do it sometimes. They'll have like a first person point, instead of alternating to third person close, they'll alternate first person and third person close or something like that. It always feels really risky to me, but that's it. Anyway, whatever choice you've chosen, stick with it. The red flags are things like head hopping. Probably most of you have heard of head hopping. If you haven't, sometimes people are doing rampant head hopping and think they're doing omniscient, which isn't, it's really not the same thing. Because with the omniscient point of view, you're very consciously choosing which character's head you're in, or whose thoughts you're exploring, or world you're seeing. Head hopping, it just happens more randomly. Like if you've been reading a story which was totally in my point of view, you know, Kat, you know, fumbled with her Kleenex as she, you know, reached up to change the slide, glanced down at this, and then suddenly it jumps into Sam was surprised to see that Kat didn't apparently know how to use her own keynote or something like that. But I see that all the time, where suddenly somebody was surprised, some other character whose head we are not in. You cannot do that. You can do something like, yeah, I wrote out an example of her mother was surprised to see that Kat seemed drunk. Instead, make it something like an expression of shock and displeasure crossed her mother's face. Wow, am I drunk? Kathy wondered. It has to come from your point of view character's perspective. You cannot jump into somebody else's perspective and have them wonder something or be surprised at something. Another mistake I see a lot is this. He did not notice the man following him. I don't know what that she is. He did not notice the man following him, or he did not notice the girl at the bar who gave him a long look as he exited. Well, if you didn't notice it and you're in third person close or in first person, then nobody notices it. It cannot be noticed. Unless, I mean, you could maybe in first person say something like, you know, at the time, I didn't notice the girl who gave me the long look as I left the bar, but I would soon find out, you know, like that. But unless you're establishing that your character is telling this story from a perspective in the future, and we already know that your character is like makes it to the future and is telling you some things that happened, then don't put in things that your point of view character can't see. And then authorial intrusion is it's basically usually another way of doing bad exposition. Exposition is so hard to do, right? And so we find infinite numbers of bad ways to do it. And an example of that would be it's especially intrusive in first person. So if I were to say, I went to see my sister, a wealthy bankruptcy attorney who lives in the newly posh Heights neighborhood in Houston. I mean, nobody thinks those thoughts. I don't think that way about my sister is a wealthy bankruptcy attorney who lives in the Heights, but I don't think about her that way. I already know all that stuff about her. So you have to find another way to convey it. Like I'd say, wow, I hope Annie pays for this dinner because she makes 6 times as much money as I do. That is a thought that I would have. Does that make sense? I'm going to pause here and see if I'm going to look and see if there's any questions. Look at the chat. Head hopping, second person. Wait a minute, let me back up a little bit. Thoughts as an editor about multiple first-person narrators telling the same story. Yeah, no, that's a thing. That could definitely happen, yeah. Alternating third person, you can alternate first person just as well, yes. I mean, it's been done successfully in lots of books. I think it's important to be careful. If you get too many, then you just start losing track of who do I care about here? Like, who am I rooting for here? What's the main thread here? But definitely, but yeah, that's definitely fine. What about jumping from third person to you, right? Second person, that's an unusual point of view. I should have listed it as one of the less common ones, but it's so uncommon. There's a book called Aura, Spanish. I mean, I read it in Spanish class, but I'm sure it's been translated. It's in second person. If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, that Italo Calvino book is in second person. There's one of those Bret Easton Ellis books is in second person, like Less Than Zero, I think maybe. That enraged me, that book, because second person, you're really taking a risk, right? Because in that book, he's like, you go into the bathroom and do a giant bump of cocaine, and then you come out and look at the girls' hot butts or something. And I'm like, no, I don't do any of those things. Stop saying I do those things. I really hate you drawing me into your creepy story. So, but I love it in Italo Calvino. That's a thrilling book, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. I hope I'm remembering correctly that it is second person. At least parts of it are, I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can alternate points of view. It's just make sure it's risky. It's a little bit tricky. It can be extremely exciting. So just make sure you've got really good control of it. Oh, if you mean that you write 90% third and then sometimes say you, that to me would look like a mistake. If I mean, I would have to read it, an example of what you're talking about, but it sounds like something that if I were an editor, if I were editing it, I would read it as a mistake. So if you're going to do something weird, you need to go all the way and do it enough that we can see, oh, this is that weird thing he does. Like occasionally he breaks into like a whole page or 2 pages that's in second person. If you just occasionally do a phrase, then it's just like, you set up a compact with the reader at the beginning of the book. And the reader is very blind at the beginning of the book. They have no idea what the point of view is, who the main character is, what the world is, what the rules of the world are. I mean, is this a historical novel? Is this science fiction? Is this magic realism? Is this, like a New Yorker short story? You're having to teach the reader all this stuff. And then if you just occasionally like break the compact just a little bit once in a while, then it just feels like, why did you break our compact? As opposed to, oh, I see, you're redefining the compact in a big way. Head hopping confuses me. How do you show what 2 different people are thinking? Yeah. Can you change? A better way is to, like the example I was giving about my mother wondering if I was drunk. It is, instead of saying, her mother wondered if Kat was drunk, have me see my mother's face and go, she looks really unhappy and displeased. Am I drunk? Did I not realize I got drunk? Something like that. Like have somebody notice it. I don't know, have them write a letter. Have them, there's like a million ways. How do we ever know what other people are thinking? I mean, in life, we don't know what the only way we know what other people are thinking are in their gestures, their tone of voice, their facial expressions, the words they say, the things they write us, their actions, that way. Can you change point of view with page breaks? It's not page breaks, but you can change with a section break, but a section break is where you put an extra space. This is kind of beyond the scope of this, but you're not supposed to indent the first paragraph of a chapter. That's just a stylistic thing. It's not a big deal. But also for a section break, you put a space and you don't indent the first paragraph of the new section. And you put a section break where you're in a chapter, but there's a break in time or space. Well, I said, we'll have to talk about it in the morning. Section break. When I got to the office the next morning, I was still mad, or something like that. So you could change after a section break, but it's just exactly applies to what I was saying before. Just be careful. Make sure you've really got a handle on it. That's that's advanced stuff you're doing. And I'm not saying you can't do advanced stuff. I'm the one who wrote my whole first book in omniscient point of view, which is insane, just because I didn't know any better, and I got away with it. So maybe you'll get away with it, but it's harder. Just know that you're choosing to do something that is harder to get away with. Blinking Caution, I don't know that book. Bright Lights, Big City, that's the one. Thank you, Not Less Than Zero. Thank you for correcting me. Second person is a book. It's gonna sound weird, but it's written in you. So it's like you woke up that morning and your eyes were full of grit because you had so much to drink last night. You push yourself out of the bed. I mean, the whole book is written that way. You do this, you do that, as opposed to he does this or she does this or I do this. It's strange. All right, I'm going to close this thing up again. Point of view, red flags, head hopping. Okay, he did not notice. All right, we did these. All right, moving on to dialogue. Dialogue also belongs in line edits, but I'm going to talk about some of the bigger dialogue issues here. because it also relates to story and pace and conflict and all that. Dialogue is so valuable. It's such a writer's friend, because it really provides yeast. Like, when you're reading a book, every reader, since writing was invented, has found themselves with a really thick, long paragraph of like description or explanation or something, finding like their eyes sliding over to see if there isn't some dialogue coming up soon, because dialogue is so much more pleasant to read. It is. It's like bouncy. It's what we're used to. It's how we're used to having things. That's how conversation works for us. Those are dialogue. It just provides yeast. It's like a leavening agent in a scene or in a book. Instead of like getting a fat, heavy, dense cake of a book, you get this really light, beautiful, moist, delicious. I should have had dinner. Yeah, it provides air or yeast. It helps you define and distinguish characters, right? Because your characters will not all talk the same way. They'll talk in very different ways, probably, hopefully, if you're doing it right. It will allow you to shift the mood with a new voice, which can be incredibly valuable, especially if you're writing a very dark book. If you have a character who is a light character, kind of wry or ironic or just hilarious, or it's just such a relief to you, to everyone. It just opens everything up to bring that new voice in. But it can work the other way too. Like sometimes you're writing a comedy and you want to give it a little bit more gravity. And so you have someone come in who's got like some real problem, a real world, real problem that they're really worried about, that they talk about. And it can give it just a little bit of weight that you want there. There's just, dialogue gives you so many options. It provides interest. I mean, that's a weird thing to say, but what I meant was I was thinking about at the Agents and Editors Conference a few years ago, I was trying to learn about story. And I went to a panel with best-selling like thriller writers talking about writing thrillers and how to make your book real pacey and exciting. And one thing this one woman said is, do not leave your character too long without somebody to talk to, because it gets way harder to make it interesting when they don't have someone to talk to. And I will say, as somebody who is constantly leaving my characters with no one to talk to, I can testify that those are the hardest parts to make interesting. And I'm trying to have more people to talk to, because it just makes it a lot easier. And a lot of times it's a crucial arena for action. A lot of times some of the most crucial action of a book takes place in dialogue. People want to turn back and they get talked back into it, or some climactic fight, or some climactic reveal, or paradigm shift, just everything. So much can happen in dialogue. So you want to be sure to get it right. There's a book called The Playwright's Handbook by a man named Stuart Spencer, and he defines action as being the character's goals or desires. And again, macro and micro goals for the whole book, but also goals, in each little stretch of dialogue, in each scene. In a dialogue, each character should have a goal, and they have to conflict, or else your dialogue is pointless. Oh, an example. Sam, would you turn your sound or video on for a second, or both?
Yes.
Would you just keep asking me, do you plan to join the church? And I'm going to answer in different ways.
Do you plan to join the church?
Yeah, I think I will. That is sorry, I'm just going to say something about this one. That's a bad one, right? Don't write dialogue where people are saying, yeah, I agree with you. All right, end of dialogue. It's just pointless. All right, now keep asking it.
Do you plan to join the church?
It's none of your business. Jeez.
Do you plan to join the church?
Oh, the church never did anything for me. Why? Why should I join it?
Do you plan to join the church?
Could you stop evangelizing me? Your piety is incredibly irritating, Sam. Give me another one. One
Do you
more.
plan to join the church?
I do, but here's the thing. You have to join with me. Don't let me talk you out of it. All right, good. Thank you. So that was a yes, but it was a yes and, right? So what they talk about in improv. Yeah, that was the example. Kinds of conflict can be internal conflict. It can be intercharacter conflict, and there could be external conflict. Every character in every dialogue is going to have this conflict. Even like the waiter in your restaurant scene is going to have their conflict is going to be, I really wish you guys would shut up and pay the bill so that I could go home. And that will make the scene more interesting if you know that about the waiter. You might, an internal conflict might be like just wanting your party guests to stop talking and go home because it's late. An internal conflict might be wanting your friend to believe that you didn't go to the party without them. That didn't happen, but that never happened. You have, nope. You have the rhythm you want to look for is need, obstacle, fulfillment. It's so much like all of these come in threes, right? These things I keep saying, like the musical one, action, sustain, release, need, obstacle, fulfillment. That should be happening over and over. This applies to whole scenes and the whole book. You have a desire, you have something you want from another person. You might want an object that they have. You might want them to do something for you. You might want them to tell you something. You might want them to grant you something, some permission or some boon. You might want them to believe something. It's really important for you that they believe something, and it might be true and it might not. But something is in the way. That's what you want. Something is in the way. You want your teen to clean his room. You want your boss to give you time off. You want your husband to give you that one necklace for your birthday. You want your, those ones I was mentioning before about you want your party guests to stop talking. You always come into dialogue with a want. Yeah, I just told you all this. I thought I didn't put it in a slide. But there it is, you can look at it. And there's other needs. I mean, those are just ones that came to me. I'm sure you guys can think of more. But something is in the way. So what strategy can your character use to get it? Let's strategize. You can do nothing. You can ask nicely. You can sweet talk. You can try to trick them out of it. You could totally lie. You could just start sobbing and begging and pleading. You could start screaming and battering and raging. You can just go silently get the object and see what they're going to do. You can pretend you don't want the object. I don't even want it. You can pretend to yourself that you don't even want it, but it's obvious to everyone that you do. The point of this list is be surprising. There's a local playwright named Kirk Lynn who I interviewed him once for a piece I was doing about political theater and why it is so boring most of the time. And he said it's because political theater tends to be set up like a bowling ball, where it's like, there's the pins and here's the ball. Watch, the ball is going to roll down. And like, you know what's going to happen is going to knock over the pins, right? Because that's the racist guy. Here's the, the guy I'm rooting for. But he said that theater, and I would say also dialogue and stories, really only works if it's not a bowling ball, but a football. So that when you throw a football and it hits the ground, you have no idea where it's going to bounce. That's why a football is shaped that way. They wanted to add that to the game. So be surprising. And now, oh, yeah, I forgot about this. Mike Nichols has this great thing I'm going to read you. It's short, about how everybody says they don't like talky movies, but he says words are very important and people are funny about words. People say, oh God, there's so much dialogue, but they don't say that about a fight. A fight is a fight. You never say, they've been talking and talking. You say, God, I thought he was going to hit her. So a fight isn't dialogue. A seduction isn't dialogue. And a negotiation isn't dialogue. Those are the three essential things that can happen in a scene. They're so deeply embedded that Aaron Sorkin says he can't even start writing a scene until he knows what the essential conflict is. My job, this is still Mike Nichols talking, is first to find out if it's a fight, a seduction, or a negotiation, then to have that happen in the scene, expressed in certain ways. If you do it right, nobody will think about the dialogue. He says All About Eve is a great example of that. You never think of it as all talk because it's so exciting and it's so funny and it's so dramatic. So let's look at his categories. Seduction. That means I'll make you want to give me what I want. I want this, and you don't want to give it to me yet, but I'm going to make you want to give it to me. The cards are not necessarily on the table at all. The other character probably doesn't know that they're being seduced. And I hope it's clear this does not have to apply to a love scene at all. I could try to seduce you right now by like charming you, or to get you to do something I wanted you to do, like, I don't know, answer a question or something like that. Negotiation. Let's come to terms, right? I want something that you control and you want something that I control. And we both know that we both have this power, so let's come to terms. In a negotiation, you've got more cards on the table just because both people know I have something that you want. But probably not all the cards are on the table. But there is more of a sense of equality, where seduction, one character has more power because they have more knowledge. They know that a seduction is happening. Fight. A fight does not have to mean a screaming match. It can. But it means I want this and you actively want me not to get it. Or we want two things that are completely at odds. All right, any questions about this? I love this seduction, negotiation, fight thing. I find it really useful. Seduction can be charming, praise, invitation, gift. Yeah, I mean, it just means that I'm trying to, I think seduction, yeah, seduction is just often, there's just often a power imbalance with seduction and a knowledge imbalance. And it probably is mostly charm and stuff, but you could also use a little threatening. I'll say that people who try to seduce me, like a salesman, for example, will be like, well, I mean, I hate to tell you, but this offer won't be around. I can't promise it'll be around tomorrow if you don't buy today, Or a guy who's trying to seduce you and who suddenly goes cold, right? If you're not if you're not coming through, then he's suddenly like, not answering your texts anymore or whatever. There's different, strategies can be. Do I plan to join the church? No, I think not. What about a secret strategy the character knows but keeps secret until the end for a twist? I'm not sure I know what you mean. A secret strategy to what? That the character knows. Chuck Farr? They keep secret to the end. Well, I would say we'll talk a little bit about secrets actually in general. And one thing is, you don't want to keep a complete secret. You rarely want to keep a complete secret because from the reader, but you want to drop a couple of hints because otherwise, you get a surprise at the end, but you don't get satisfaction. The little hint drops of mystery, there's something, even if it's just like there's something going on here I don't know, and then when it pays off, that's very satisfying. Boy, you made me realize I wish I had talked a little bit about well, too late. Do I have examples of movie book scenes? No, but they are everywhere. I mean, you will start seeing them everywhere now. I promise. Are there more that aren't talky? More dialogue? Well, we're talking about dialogue right now, so no, all the dialogue is going to be talky. But yeah, there are definitely, you can seduce, negotiate, and fight in ways that do not just involve dialogue, that's for sure, if that's what you're asking me. Let's, let's do a dang, yeah, I want this and you want me not to get it. What we want is at odds. Yeah, this is something I see a lot in manuscripts I'm editing, where when the characters start talking, they'll go pages and pages with just conversation and dialogue tags. And it's like I've been watching a movie and suddenly the screen has gone black and I'm just on audio now. And I hate it. I really hate it. I mean, you can imagine how you would feel in a movie theater if suddenly the screen went blank and there was audio only. It's weird and disruptive, and you lose so much information. I want to see the expressions on their face. I want to see if they're finishing that dinner. I want to see if the waiter is side-eyeing them, you know, from over there. I want to see, I want to hear, I want to like smell the chicken they're eating. I want to feel I want to see if the light, they've been talking for a long time now. Is the light changing, you know? Is it like sunset happening? They're walking along a river. Is it the light hitting the water in a different way now? I don't know. I don't know, because they have completely stopped giving me any of that information just because the people are talking. Don't do that. Obviously, you can go a short stretch, you know, like a third of a page or something like that, maybe even a half page of dialogue, but gotta bring in some sensory details and some action. I need to see and smell and see the light and feel the air, and I need all of that. I need all of that. Yeah, keep our bodies involved during dialogue, and you do that with those sensory details. It's really crucial, and I'll talk about it more at length. And you can use, you don't just have to put it in like Kat said, I have to put in physical description and actions, I'll jam some in. It's a fantastic device. It's a fantastic tool for creating the rhythm of the dialogue, right? So that if you want a silence in the dialogue, all you have to do is just say what happens in the silence, you know? The plates and the silverware clinked as he put his fork down. Someone behind them laughed too loud at a joke. The waiter dropped by and said, "Everything okay?" And then the dialogue starts again. I mean, that's what happens in silence, right? It's not like nothing happens in silence. All right. Any questions about that? Oh, I have an exercise. So if you've got any questions, send them in now. I think we should write a little dialogue exercise. I think I've been talking long enough. Okay, and the exercise is, by the way, I'm just going to give you like 5 or 6 minutes to write. So your writing is not going to be good. Don't worry about that. That's not the point of this at all. It's just, I don't know, maybe it'll be good. I don't know. Sometimes something comes out good when you write really fast. That's not the point of this, whether it's good or not. The point is, these are just like finger exercises. It's like scales. I wish I could get you guys to read them out loud, but that won't work. So let me just give you the exercise. And this exercise is from that Playwright's Handbook. I think it's a really weirdly brilliant exercise. If we could all read them out loud afterwards, you'd be amazed at how differently people came at this. But, oops. So you need 2 characters. One is trying to get a book from the other. That is all I give you. Everything else, who they are, where they are, what their relationship is, why one of them needs the book, why the other one has it, what the stakes are, all of that is up to you. I'm gonna give it like five or 6 minutes, something like that. Okay, anybody got anything? Any questions or anything they learned or anything that jumped out at them? I'll wait for like 30 seconds or a minute, and then if it's silence, then I'll just move on. It did stimulate some good action and dialogue. Oh, good. Everybody's all of a sudden, my characters were children. How do you differentiate two children's voices who are close in age, 10 and 12? Well, I would say, when I was 10 and 12, when I was 10 and I was 12, my brother was 10, or my sisters who were 10 and 12, they were still very different people. I'm very earnest. My brother was really hilarious. My sisters, when they were 10 and 12, one of them was like Queen of the May and, beautiful princessy. And the other one was this like downtrodden, shy girl that my other sister was always bullying. There's children have personalities. Children have personalities. It's the whole basis of my career as a writer, actually. Kidlit. The book was sketches that my MC makes and his crush has it. Oh, nice. Yeah, maybe he found something you could use. I'm glad it stimulated some good action and dialogue. Characters felt like they had more at stake than just a book, and I was keeping in mind their individual objectives. That's great. Yeah, it can be like incredibly intense just over a book. If you write it that way. Oh, good. Okay, yeah, I like timed writing too. Sometimes it's difficult to leave out she said, he smiled, he snickered to distinguish who is speaking. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about that. I think in the line, I know I wrote a whole thing about that. Maybe that happens in the line edit section. If I don't talk about it later, please bring it up, because I definitely have thoughts about the he said, she said, having all the dialogue tags in there. Breaking up the dialogue lets me, as a writer, also have a break in the scene, see it better, think about the realness of what the characters say. Yeah, I do too. It puts you in your body. You should be writing out of your body so that the reader can read it with their body. And I'm going to get to later why that is so important. Struggled until I could think of what was the motivation, but it was fun to create a rhythm. And okay, good. Oh, good. Focus on desires and stakes. That's what this exercise was very magical for me in that way, in that I suddenly realized, wow, it doesn't matter the situation. All I have to do is give them big desires and big stakes. And then it's like incredibly interesting, no matter what the dumb thing is of the book that they're trying to get. Little section, yeah. Somebody's put in some of this stuff. That's good. Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Oops. Nope. I am going to go back just slightly because somebody said something in the text that reminded me, in the chat, that reminded me I meant to mention this when I was talking about paciness. And that is something Hitchcock says about creating tension, which was a big revelation to me when I read it. And just in case it's a revelation to any of you, I will mention it. He said, you can just like keep something secret and then the restaurant blows up, and that's a big shock. But you've wasted a ton of tension you could have created if you showed a happy family on their way to the restaurant, and then you cut to a guy building a bomb. And then you showed the family, and the little girl is especially adorable. We kind of really like her, and they're deciding what to order. Will they get ice cream? And then you show the man walking with his bomb in his suitcase. And then you show, oh, it's the little girl's birthday. And And then you see the man walk into that restaurant and walk past their table. He's sitting right by them. I mean, now the tension is like going up, up, up. And the family is talking about, maybe we should leave. And you're like, yes, please get out of there. But then no, something holds them up. And you see the guy going to, I mean, now it's like you miss that one surprise of, wow, the restaurant blew up. But you get so much tension by giving the reader, I mean, in his case, the audience, but by giving the reader information. If you give them information, you can drive it. You wouldn't think that that would create mystery and suspense, but it really does if you do it right. All right. Should have been back on the arc and pacing section, so let's pretend that it was. Now we're going to talk about exposition a little bit. Yeah, there was anything I want to tell you about exposition. It's that really people really have to care first. You cannot, I was just coaching a writer who wanted to just start with like explaining like the whole history of her world and everything. I was like, no, because nobody cares. Nobody cares about your world yet. They're not going to read it. That's just boring to read like the history of somebody's world. You want to jump into a story, not into a like textbook. But exposition can be your friend, not your enemy. But here are some signs that it is your enemy. If it's just in big undigested blobs, like when with my little girl in my second book, The Radiant Road, sitting in the tree with this half fairy guy, and he's like giving her a long lecture, just what this other woman wanted to be, just giving her a long lecture, explaining everything about the world. It was bad. As you know, Steve, if you ever find yourself writing, as you know, or even not writing it, but still telling somebody something, you know, Mom, you and Dad have been married for 20 years. I mean, just don't. No. Yeah, and the Basil exposition from Austin Powers, or Mrs. Drudge, the woman who answers the phone, hello, whatever it is, Catmull Manor, one warm morning in early June, or like that character that my editor made me cut out of my first book. It's very, very tempting to have some character who's got all the answers and can explain everything, but you're probably doing it wrong in that case. The gold standard for me in figuring out whether I'm doing the exposition right or not is if the answer to the question, why is this character saying this, is I need the character to explain that now because something's going to happen and the reader needs to know that. The character should never say anything because you need them to say something. They should say something because they need them to say something. If you need them to say something, make it so they need to say it, like a legit reason that this needs to be conveyed. Or, I mean, there's other ways to do it too, which I'm about to talk about, how to make it work for you. So exposition, treat it like you're the CIA. Your reader gets information on a need-to-know basis only. Just try withholding it. Just try withholding it. I know you feel like you need to say it all now, but see if maybe you don't until you come to a point where somebody absolutely does need to know. And then activate the exposition. Can you make it a seduction, a negotiation, or a fight? Well, here, let's just do the other ones too. You can convey it in conflict, right? It has to be a real conflict. I edited a book one time. It was a really good book, but it had some bad exposition bits. And one was where this character was telling another character something he knows. And the other character said, I know that. I know, but I also know you don't like to talk about it. So I'm just doing this to get a dig at you. No, it doesn't work. It has to be like a real conflict. You could make it, for example, make it somebody else's action, somebody else's goal to find out that information, so that instead of a sort of deadly, as you know, like the CEO says, as you know, John, this is we're considering purchasing a $5 billion corporation, and that could be really important for us. Instead of that, why don't you have a junior executive who really wants to find out about this deal because it could make or break his own career. So he decides to seduce somebody in accounting to find out what exactly is going on with that deal. Like that's way, way, way more interesting than it, as you know, Steve, we're about to do a $5 billion purchase or whatever. You can also present a lot of your exposition and world kind of information and history in ways that aren't words, you know, in gestures, in silence, in clothing, in decor, in manner of speech. A lot of things could just become obvious if you build your world out all the way. People could just pass, you could have somebody just, if you have a world where vampires are real, you could just have somebody pass a store where they're selling, you know, what would a vampire, you know, something a vampire would need or something. And then your reader knows, oh, there's vampires in this world. Flashback books sometimes, or like a story, you know, but that's tricky. Just be careful. Just make sure you're earning it. Make sure it's like activated and interesting. I've used not flashback, but I've used like stories where somebody tells it as a story, but I write for children, so that's easier to do. Going back to presenting it, probably the weirdest thing I said was just how you can do it in gesture, silence and clothes and decor and that kind of thing. But I mean, instead of having somebody saying, well, my mother's really wealthy and into, you know, fancy things, bringing them to the mother's house and have it be absolutely clear that she's wealthy and into fancy things. Instead of having, saying, you know, my mother's really well educated, just to have the mom have this really outlandish vocabulary and give her esoteric, you know, she's really into 17th century Latvian farming techniques or something like that. My favorite solution, again, do they really need to know? Do they definitely need to know? It's really surprising how often there's something you need to know. Like all that glob of stuff that I was having my fairy boy tell this girl, I needed to know all that. She didn't need to know all of that. She needed to know some of it as she went along. She had to pick up some of these things, but she certainly didn't need to know it all then. And she didn't need to know all of it at all. I needed to know it. So be sure to separate what you need to know from what the character needs to know and from what the reader needs to know. Final thoughts on exposition. Make the reader beg for it, man. This is where it can really be your friend. Make it into a page turning device. Just like dole out those breadcrumbs and make them like have to like, oh, so wait, is this a world where vampires are real? You know, just keep giving out the hints. So then they're turning the pages because they want to know. That's the best way to make it your friend. Make them come to you. Because readers are okay not knowing things if they know that they will find out. So raise the question, right? If there's something that people could be like, wait a minute, is have somebody in the book ask that question. Have your main, you know, like if it's the vampires are real in this world or whatever, just have them wonder, is it possible vampires are real in this world? But don't answer it yet. Don't answer it yet. But that said, don't make them wait too long. You know, don't make them wait raise the question and then 8 chapters later, hey, it turns out vampires are real. You need to keep raising the question. And also don't ask them to juggle too many plates at once. Like, are vampires real? And is that the main character's actual mother? And is that, you can have a couple of, you know, you can have a few questions, but answer them occasionally, and don't ask them to juggle 18 plates in the air and keep in their mind all these things that they might find out later on. All right, I just did a bunch of talking about exposition. Are there any questions? Yes. Holy smokes. Is the exposition the storyline? No, the exposition is, it's like, I've been giving examples of it, you know, like, oh, the little fairy boy telling her, well, it turns out that in dreams, humans move into fairy, and when we make art, fairies, we go into your world and make our art in your world using nature. And but there's a bad man that's coming to. It's just like the backstory. It's just like stuff that you feel. Yeah, it's just the backstory. It's stuff that's not happening right now, but that it would be useful for people to know to understand what's happening. Like, it's probably stuff you know, but it's just very hard to convey in a way that's not a big glob. You could start out a historical fiction with, in 1502, King Henry VIII, blah, 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 and just give a whole bunch of history, but it would be way more exciting to just jump into King Henry having sex with Anne Boleyn or whatever, and then just drop the backstory in as if it absolutely needs to be in there, the little pieces of, my wife was married to my brother before. Like, that's a piece of backstory in Henry VIII's story that eventually probably somebody needs to know because it's important, but you don't want to drop it all in at the beginning. I hope that makes sense. Examples of activating the exposition. Well, I was just given a bunch. Oh, maybe I have given them since you asked that question. I hope so anyway. The examples about, the house or the mother or the junior executive seducing somebody to try to get the information instead of somebody just saying the information. That's activating the exposition. Whenever it turns into a conflict, then it's activated. Explaining everything seems more economical. Yeah, it seems more economical and it seems more efficient, I guess is how I'd put it. Like, I think the reader needs to know this, so I'm just going to dump it out. But the reader doesn't want to. The reader wants you. They want to be delighted and charmed. They don't want to hear, like, they don't want you to read them. Okay, you have to take this, eat your vegetables first before I give you the dessert of the story. They want all dessert. So you got to make it into dessert. You got to make the exposition into dessert also. How do you feel about starting in a time period like a prologue and starting the story a few years later? Is that a mistake? Well, I often hear people say, like agents and editors say prologues, well, we don't like prologues, but I think it can work sometimes. I know I've seen it work. Just ask yourself if you really need to try it without it and see if it still works. If there's another way to do it, but I always want to skip the prologue, frankly, as a reader. I'm like, well, if this was really part of the book, you'd have put it in chapter 1. So I'm skipping the prologue. So if there's something you don't want people to skip, you might just start with chapter 1. I don't know. But sometimes you need one. So, I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying look at it and think about it. Do you consider backstory exposition to be avoided? Yeah, I do consider backstory exposition. It's not that it's to be avoided. Sometimes you need people to know this stuff. It's that you need to do it really artfully and weave it into and activate it and make it a delicious dessert instead of I have to chew my way through 3 pages of backstory in order to read this book, I guess. And make sure to make them care. Don't start with backstory and exposition because nobody cares yet. Once they really care about your character, then they're dying to know, how did she end up this way? Who was her? Then they're interested to hear about, her mom and dad, were like bonkers and belonged to a cult. Oh, and a lot of things make sense now. But if you start out with, my mom and dad were bonkers and belonged to a cult, so, I had a weird childhood. People were like, okay, whatever, I don't know you, lady. Why are you telling me your life story? It goes back to the what's in the pocket exercise. You don't have to tell the reader what's in there, but show how having those objects might affect the characters. Yeah, exactly. Like, you need to know what's in your character's pockets. And sometimes you might choose to tell, but often you might not choose to tell people what's in the pockets. Maybe it's not important, but it's important to you. Yeah, that is a great comparison. Dan, yes. Expand, making the reader beg for the exposition. That's what I mean by if you make it something intriguing, instead of I'm trying to think of an example. Like Henry VIII, this is not a great example, but if you can say, like courtiers are saying, but he can't divorce her because, well, everybody knows why or something. And then the reader's like, what, why? why can't she divorce him? Or, you know what I mean? I mean, this isn't really a good example, because that's not how Henry VIII worked, but like, make it a piece of information that the reader is like, feels like a detective they're on the hunt for, that it's going to be so satisfying when they find out why Henry VIII can't divorce him. Oh, she was married to his brother, so maybe they weren't really married, so they had to do this thing with the Pope, and now it's going to mess up his current divorce. Instead of just saying it flat out, make it an interesting mystery. That's what I mean by making the reader beg for the exposition. And getting them engaged in it, you know what I mean? Like, they're on the hunt for knowing this thing, instead of like, this person's boring me to death with this information. How do you decide what the reader needs to know? Yeah, it's hard for me too. I feel you. Because I always feel, as you can tell from the way I talk and teach, I'm like, I want to tell you everything I know. But that can be a little bit overwhelming. So what I try to do is like dial it way back, and then look at it and see, yeah, no, they really need to know a little bit more than that. You know what I mean? To take it as farther back than I should, and then start dealing. And I don't know how to say it better than that, really. It's just hard. It's hard to know. One way is if your beta readers are like, I was totally confused here. I mean, then you know, oops, I needed to put more in. I am talking about writing a seduction. Yeah. Oh, all right, good. It's too many plates at once, too many exposition, or no, too many plates at once is, I'm saying it's very useful to raise questions in the reader's mind. Like, wait a minute, are vampires real here? Could that guy be a vampire? That's a page turning technique, right? Because then people want the answer to that question that you have raised. And then you keep raising it. Just every so often you remind them, yeah, that's still a question. You drop another little hint or something. But you don't want like 15 of those going at once, because the reader cannot remember all those questions and all the breadcrumb trails. You know what I mean? Give them just, a few little breadcrumb trails, the important ones. That's what I meant by too many plates in the air, because they won't all stay in the air. They'll come crashing down and they'll forget. Oh yeah, did I care about was there something about vampires? Was that a question? I can't remember. It's so much stuff to remember. Yeah, so it's not to do with subplots or anything. It's questions that you have raised. Okay, all right. Good God, what is next? I guess if we could all find out together. Yes. World building. Yeah, it's not just for fantasy. It applies to any narrative writing, really. I mean, you wrote a book set in Austin, Texas in 2019. You still need to do some world building. And fully imagine the world, right? Go deep and go high and go low. Go imagine, and even this might not all go in your book, but imagine imagine the economy. Imagine why is it laid out the way it's laid out? Like what's the history of it that made this the layout of this place, this world? In Austin, a lot of that's going to have to do with like the racial politics of like the early part of the 20th century. And that's interesting. And that definitely affects the way Austin is today. It had this soft segregation for so long that it never really integrated. And we're still like an incredibly segregated city for an allegedly liberal one, I think. All those things are interesting to think about. And like, what's the main, how are people making their money? How, what do people do for recreation? What's the geography of it? What goes up and down the river if there's a river? All of those things are really important. Specific sensory details in your world are incredibly important. I'm going to bang on about that a lot more when we get to line editing. And world building is a way to convey exposition too, right? I mean, if you just show, hey, like when I moved to Austin, one side of 35 was white and one side of 35 was black. And that then you don't need to hear my whole like history that I just gave you about soft segregation in Austin, because you can see it. Let's see. Oh yeah, let's see. Do we have time for this? I think we don't have time for a world building exercise because we have another exercise later. So I'm just going to skip on. Another thing to do, so these are all things you're looking at, right, while you're doing your read through. Another thing to look for is seedlings. By seedling, I mean, you probably planted a lot of seeds, whether consciously or unconsciously, as you were writing. They might be little images that would crop up again and again, or motifs that crop up again and again, or themes, you know. And then some of them flourished and got really interesting, and some of them did not. So the ones that didn't, you're going to want to go back and pull. Like, that was a cool idea I had about eggs, how eggs were going to be really important in this story, but they aren't, so I'm taking out the eggs. Cultivate the ones that did, especially the ones that you had really late in the game. Like, and that often happens because you're knowing your own world better as you go. That you'll have a great idea really late in the game. Like, wait a minute, she was always in love with that one guy. Or, gosh, I don't know. Or, wow, now that I look back, I see that the theme of people not speaking to her, like the silence and her like trying to get people to talk to her is like really important in her life and kind of a big metaphor for whatever. I mean, it could be like a million different things. So I'm just saying, keep an eye out for interesting little motifs that have been repeating or that you thought were going to repeat and didn't. Pull the ones that didn't. And the ones that did, kind of cultivate them, kind of push them up a little bit so people can see them a little bit better, and plant a couple more that maybe weren't there before. And if you had great ideas late in the game, then note that I'm going to have to set this up. I'm going to have to go back. If I'm going to want her to have been in love with him all along, I'm going to have to start planting those seeds much earlier. That is something that'll be an important part of your revision. Also look at your length once you're done. You know, just Google the word lengths in your genre and try to be within spitting range on one side or the other of that. If it's too long, what if it's too long? If it's too long, look for ways that you can reduce it, like a sauce. I'm kind of thinking, you know, in cooking, you know, if you're cooking a sauce and you want the flavor to be really intense, you just keep cooking it. So there's less sauce, but the flavor is so intense. I work with a writer who's a really good writer, and she told me that she writes like 30 pages for every 5 or 6 she sends to me to comment on. And she just reduces them. Like, she says, I need to write the 30 pages, and then I just reduce it down to the stuff that's absolutely essential. And it's beautiful. It's inspiring to me, actually. I'm going to try to do more of that in my own writing. Look for places, you know, just things like where you're just over-describing action. I don't need to know each step of action usually, unless there's a really important reason for me to hear that, you know, I opened the refrigerator, took out the jug of lemonade, opened the cupboard, took out a glass, poured the lemonade into the glass, put it back in the refrigerator, drank the lemonade. Like, that's too much. Just I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of lemonade. It was great. That's all I need. But mostly reduction, I think, is the key when you're too long. And I tend to go too long, by the way. So I feel you. How do you, Catherine, edit all these things? Do you do many passes? Like one to check for exposition? No. On the first, this is one pass where we're looking for all this stuff. I know it seems impossible, but that is, and really what that's, a lot of that's going to just be by feel. You're going to be reading, you're going to be, this isn't working, or this is dull, or this is just, it's just sitting there. It's not doing anything. You'll know the parts when you read them, you're like, dang, I'm good. This is so good. I'm so excited by this. So what this is, all this stuff we've been doing, mark this part's not working. And now you can look at it and go, why? Is it not activated? Is there no conflict? Is it just like a long stretch of dialogue with a, you know, oh, is it a big blob of exposition? It's like there's many, many things it could be. Your first read through is to read through as a reader, you know, and say, look, this part's not working. And now you have all these tools to figure out why isn't it working. What is the best process for editing? I've waiting several months to begin editing, so I want to begin editing very carefully. When you open the book up again, I mean, just read it like a reader, really. I mean, read it like a reader, but you're also reading it like a writer, because you have your pen in your hand and you're circling, like, this page is dull. This page is just sitting there. This exposition is boring. This is a big glob of backstory nobody wants to read at this point. But now you have the tools, right, for how to fix it. But right now, the first read, you're just going through, feeling it out, reading it like a reader would read it. Yeah, how to reduce. I know. I mean, I'm a hoarder of words too. I can't, obviously I never cut anything. I cut things out, but I put them in a special file where I will come back to them, because I will definitely use them again. This is all like made up in my head. I never ever look at them again, but I can't bear to cut them. I have to put them somewhere else. Just cut stuff, force yourself to cut stuff and see how it works. And you can always put it back in. Nobody's taking it out of your hands. It's sitting right over there, absolutely safe and sound. You can always put it back. See what it's like without those chunks that you can cut. Yeah, I could use a course in reduction too. If I ever get great at it, I'll offer one. Should we avoid ing words? Nope, not necessarily. How to cut all these beautiful pearly words? Yeah, nope, 3, yep. This is just the story edits. We haven't come to the line edits or the copy edits yet. We're just spending most of our time on the story edits because it is the hardest. If it's too short, look for places where you're summarizing, where it should be a scene, and I'm going to say what that means in a minute. This is me tantalizing you. I'm going to say what that means in a minute. I did my story edit read through. Now what? How to do your story edits. Because sometimes people say, what do you actually do? There's a lot of systems. You will develop your own, but here is mine, just so you'll know what a system might look like. There are whole book problems, and there are chapter problems, and there are new ideas. Those are the main ways. A whole book problem might be something like, wow, I didn't realize it, but Eleanor is an incredibly dull character. Or, wow, Isabel and Gray fall in love way too quickly. It is not at all believable or interesting. I could really, if I stretch that out, I could make it a lot more interesting. Or, wow, I failed to describe, I put vampires in this world and failed to have it have any effect on the world at all. But if we had vampires living amongst us openly, it would affect things like people trying to make money off it. Just for one thing, people are always trying to make money off of anything. I mean, it would affect nightclubs, you know, there'd be whole nightclubs set up. Just that's your whole book list, things I need to fix throughout the book. Your chapter list will be, just like it sounds like, problems in individual chapter. I have a summary here that really should be a scene. I need to cut down that description of the apartment. I don't know why I spent 4 pages describing the apartment. Nobody cares. Ben needs to be funnier in this chapter to kind of lighten things up. And then also there's the new ideas you had, like way at the end, or you're having as you go. So you're going to make a note. What I do, I work in Scrivener, which kind of makes this easier, but however, whatever a note means to you. You're going to make a note at the beginning of each chapter with the list of the chapter fixes that are required. In Word, maybe you could make that like a comment, a long comment at the top of each chapter or something. And then anything the whole book needs, look at the chapters, just like think, okay, Isabel and Gray are falling in love too quickly. So that's going to be chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 8, 9, 10. All of those are places where their love thing is happening. So I'm going to need, so then you'll add Isabel and Grayson in all those as well, in those chapters as well. Don't forget, I mean, you can't, you got this. You can't edit a whole book all at once. You can only edit it chapter by chapter, right? Just like that book, and probably most of you have read the book, Bird by Bird, or have heard of the book Bird by Bird, Annie Lamott. It's a book about writing. And the title comes from an incident when she was a kid and her little brother had had 6 weeks to do a major project on birds. And he started it the night before, and he was sitting at the kitchen table, completely overwhelmed, not knowing where to start. And their dad sat down and put his arm around him and said, just got to go bird by bird, buddy, bird by bird. It's the same thing with revising a novel, chapter by chapter, scene by scene in the chapter, and chapter by chapter is how you'll revise it. You got this. Giving yourself intermediate deadlines might help. I need intermediate deadlines, so I set myself, this chapter will be finished by the end of the week or whatever. I mean, whatever, you know what works for you. All right, line edits. What kind of writer are you? If you're one of those people who zips through their first draft super easily, it's possible that you'll find that I'm jealous of you. B, you may find that your sentences, when you come to the line edit, which is where you're looking, let me pause and say, you have completed your story edits. That's why we have moved on to line edits. So however long that took you, bird by bird, chapter by chapter, you finished your major story edits. Now you're just going to look at the actual prose. If you're a writer who writes first drafts very easily, a lot of times those people's sentences may need their prose may need a little bit of thickening. If you're somebody like me who works and reworks your prose to death as you go, then they might need a little bit of thinning because you might have gone too far. But it's not always the case. I'm just trying to give you a hint about what kind of writer you might be, what you might find. How to line edit. I print it out again. After you've finished all those story edits, I like to get another bound copy. Again, give yourself at least a couple of weeks, hopefully maybe a little bit more. Read it with a pen in hand, and you're going to look for scene versus summary. I promised I would talk about this. I'm so interested in this. It's a problem I see all the time. All stories are ghost stories in that they are built to affect the body. It's just a lot easier to see that with ghost stories. The difference between a scene and a summary is so clear with ghost stories, but it applies to all kinds of stories. So if I told you a ghost story, we were at a campfire, and I was holding the light under my face, and I said, I got a good ghost story. And you guys said, okay. And I said, there was this woman who'd been driving late at night, and she thought this gas station attendant was an escaped psychotic killer, but it turned out he was just trying to warn her that the maniac was in her backseat. I feel like there'd be a lot of disappointment around the campfire because what I have just done is summarized a ghost story. Because the way a ghost story would actually go is, so she was this girl I knew. She was driving home from college one night. It was really dark and raining really hard. And it was this really isolated part of Highway 12 where it's out in the country. It's just all thick woods on both sides, and her wipers are slapping, and she's trying to see in the dark through the rain. And it was just static on her radio, but then this voice popped out, and it says, shh, the killer, responsible for multiple rapes and murders, escaped from a mental hospital near Highway 12. She turns it off. Anyway, I'm not going to do a whole ghost story for you, but you see that that's really different, right? Those are really different. And the difference was that the scene I started, the second one that I began, was a scene. Scene versus summary. All stories are ghost stories in this sense. They are machines that are made to have an effect on the body. So look for where you have a summary where it should be a scene. Scenes speak the body's language. I really cannot say how important this is. People, I'm an actor as well as a writer, and people often ask me if acting, are they the same or how do they relate? But to me, they're actually quite different. For me, acting is much more like reading, because when I'm reading, and hopefully you too, if it's a book you love, when I'm reading a book I love, I'm so caught up in it. I'm feeling all the feelings the character is feeling. My heart is literally beating fast. I'm literally crying. or I'm literally laughing. I mean, I can't, sometimes I get so stressed out that I have to look at I have to see how it ends, or I just can't, I'm too freaked out. That's how you want to be as an actor, right? You want to have fallen so hard into somebody else's world that you're just feeling those feelings. You're just expressing, you're like saying, and when I'm reading the book, I'm like saying the words with her. Yes, I feel that too. But the only way you can achieve that, the only way to achieve that with a reader is to, like there's an acting exercise, like a method kind of acting exercise. If you like want to be sad on stage, they suggest you remember something that happened to you once. But if I just remember, oh yeah, my gray cat that died, I found her dead. That was sad. It was super sad, but I don't feel sad when I say that. But if I remember, yeah, she had been so sick, and her eyes were just like sinking into her head, and we had decided, you know, today was probably going to be the day. And I got up that morning and my other cat was crouched on the table looking so scared and freaked out. He like immediately stood up and tried to jump on me, and I picked him up and I turned around and realized that our other cat was like really stiff and cold, laying on this yellow towel. And I realized she had just died on her own. And now I am really sad thinking about our cat dying, but that's because I remembered how I got up and what the light was like, and my other cat's cry. It's only when your body buys in that this is really happening, only when your body buys in does your imagination buy in and your emotions buy in. The body is where it all starts. The body really rules everything. I don't know, I won't even go off on that. We think we're so much in our heads, but we're really in our bodies. If you speak to the reader's body, then you've got them. You can get away with so much if you can write to the reader's body in a visceral way that makes them feel things. In a scene, you also stay in the present moment by moment, right? Like I was doing in that, I wasn't like, well, see, she had been driving and then but it turned out, I mean, you tell it in order, like even the sentences should be in order. Don't say, but I see people doing this sometimes and it drives me nuts. I have to write it out. I did such and such, you know, he walked in. Before he had walked in, I had already, you know, fixed the house or something. No, just do it in order. I fixed the house and then he walked in. It really makes a difference because the reader just wants to be drawn in. They want it to be happening to them. A scene also often includes dialogue. Often includes dialogue, and sometimes mental dialogue counts, right? Like people talking to themselves, you know, using words in their own head and like following their own feelings, their own line of feelings. That counts. Also, never use topic sentences, which people do sometimes, where they like say, I shouldn't never say never, because you can use this in a foreshadowing way, but you kind of ruin a scene by saying, you know, the day my boyfriend came over to break up with me, I had just cleaned my house. I mean, that can be a technique, but if you use it consciously, but mostly you don't want to give away that the boyfriend is breaking up with me. You want to say like, oh, I was excited. My boyfriend was coming over. So I cleaned the house and I had this special food ready for him, but we came in, he had a funny look on his face. Yeah. All right. Anybody got questions? Let me check in and see where we're at. I put notes in Scrivener about problems in the scene that need to be fixed. How do you get this in the bound print? How do you get this in the bound printout of your first draft of your novel? Oh, I don't know if you can. I don't know the answer to that. You probably can't. You might have to just have your Scrivener open nearby while you're reading it. Or else somehow cut them out and put it into the text. I don't know. Well, spooky good. Can you recommend a book resource on how to learn to describe body language, people reactions? You know what? I can't really. It's funny. I mean, there may be one out there, but I don't know of one. Maybe like a poetry book. Mary Oliver has a lovely book about writing poetry where she talks a lot about like going from general to specific, more specific, more specific, more specific, which is kind of part of what it is. Maybe I need to write this book since I'm so hot on it. It really matters to me a lot. I mean, I think it's a really crucial part of writing. Okay. Do we have, let's see. Oh yeah, summarize only occasionally and thoughtfully, by which I mean, obviously, if you tried to write the whole book in scene where every single moment of the character's life was written out and given full honor, you know, the book would be 8 billion pages long. Sometimes you have to summarize, but just choose those moments. Just know when you're choosing, okay, here's like a jump cut, right? Like they have in film. You can just have a jump cut where you don't really summarize. You're just like the next morning. So we don't have to see you're falling asleep and all that. Or some places you might want to summarize. You know, I went and said my piece to the boss and he agreed. So armed with my new power, I went to go have it out with that coworker. But just choose those moments. When you're summarizing, summarize briefly. When you're not summarizing, and if it's important, if you want it to have weight, if you want it to have emotional weight and imaginative weight, make sure you put it in scene. Looking at the chat here. Scrivener is a software program. I find it absolutely invaluable. I have been using it a long time, but some people find it a little overwhelming because it can do a million things. So it's like sitting down at controls of a jet plane or something, but I really only used like 2 or 3 of the things it can do for the first 5 or 6 years I used it. It's just those things are so valuable. It's really nice. It's where you can, you know, do a free download and play around with it. And it's not expensive also. It's like $45 or something, I think. Do you suggest doing a self-edit first or having beta readers read your first? I would not suggest having beta readers read your first draft. I would, yeah, I'm going to get to beta readers actually, yes. But first draft, no. Probably more like third or fourth draft is who the beta readers read. Yeah, Scrivener is great. It is, no, it's not exactly like Word, although you can easily write in Scrivener and then print it out as Word, or not print, but I mean like save it as Word, compile it, they call it. You can compile it as a Word document so that you can send it out as Word, but it's not web-based, no. Yeah, I know, Scrivener, it's so good. I'm a huge Scrivener evangelist. I try it. If you're intrigued at all, try it. It makes a lot of things easier. I hate to do this because maybe at the end I'll show you Scrivener real quickly because I'm afraid I'll lose. I had a hard time getting it to share this screen, so I've been afraid to go away from it, but I'll show you my Scrivener screen so you can see it. Oh yeah, scene exercise. Do we have time? I think we do. Let's take 5 minutes and just do this scene exercise. And this is what happens. They meet at a restaurant, they argue it out until they were asked to leave. Who they are, what the argument is, what's happening at the restaurant, all that. Let's just take 5 minutes and really just remember scene things, staying moment to moment, using all those senses. The smell is one that is often neglected. I also feel like the quality of light is often neglected. I'm always wondering, what's the light like? What time of year is it? I don't know this. I can't really fully be in your world. Let's try. Let's take 5 minutes and write this scene. I'm gonna get myself a little more water. Give it a couple more minutes. Well, he's sitting on a blanket on the floor, my cat, looking wounded and unattended to. Let's wrap it up in like the next minute. Okay, you guys, if you have any thoughts or questions or learned anything or things you hated or whatever about in that exercise, it was pretty quick to write a scene, but hopefully my intention at least was that you'd find a little, be coming at it with sort of a new attention to the moment to moment and the sensory details and all that. I'll wait since it seems like it, yeah, I forget to add. Yeah, it is. It's a good one. Oh. I see a woman who's sort of a genius. She's actually a therapist, like a psychologist, but she's also a body worker, and she's a friend of mine, but she also gives me body work sometimes, and she's always talking about how I'm just very, in my head, I'm a very heady kind of person. I'm not athletic or Nancy or anything. But she said when she read my book, she was stunned. She was like, "You are in your body." I was like, "Yeah, I am. I am when I'm writing, I guess. When I'm writing, I'm in my body for some reason. It feels really important to me." Anything else? Anything else that came to anybody? Oh, well, that's good though. That's a good action. A lot of feelings there, getting stood up. All right. Well, I'm going to move on. I'm leaving time at the end for questions or discussion and stuff anyway. So what else to look for in your line edit? Paragraphing. I mean, this is kind of obvious, but sometimes I see things where people just don't put paragraphs in, do put paragraphs in, and make sure they break at like a logical point. And an effective point, and a point that like pushes the reader onto the next paragraph. Look for echoes in your writing. It happens a lot for some reason where you use the same word twice in one sentence or in two sentences right next to each other, or like a version of the word. Just, I hear a voice in my head while I am reading. It's called subvocalizing, and apparently you're not supposed to do it, but I do. To me, it's one of the great pleasures of reading. It's like I'm being read to. If you're not one of these people, you should probably do some reading out loud of scenes of your own writing to hear how they sound out loud. And then you'll hear the echoes and stuff. So watch for those. That I saw / I heard, I realized, I noticed. Well, I write those too. But when I'm revising, I try to pull them out like weeds. Sometimes they're needed. Sometimes you want to point up, I saw this, but otherwise, or she, if it's, it's third person, which is actually how I write. It's like she saw, she heard, Summer heard, Bird realized, the dad noticed. Take unless there's a good reason, take the saw, heard, realized, noticed out, because it just stands between the reader and the character. They want to be the character. They don't want, I saw the bus barreling towards me. They want, the bus is barreling towards me. They don't want that somebody standing between me and the bus. I want it to be happening to me. Yeah, people are always looking at things. Oh my gosh, yes, I know, I know. And it's so not, I was actually just wrote a long thing about that in a client's thing. The problem with my characters are always looking at things too. It's why? Stop it. At least don't have them just look, have it be meaningful in some way. But you would really be surprised how he saw, he heard, he realized, he noticed, how often they can go, and it's better without them. So test them, make them prove their mettle when you're doing a line edit. In dialogue, don't get too fancy with the dialogue tags. Said is invisible, and invisible is what you want a dialogue tag to be. The more, there's some other ones that are kind of semi-invisible, like asked or replied, but when you're getting into like things like sneered or snickered or one I really hate is laughed, because you can't really laugh a line. It's not a dialogue tag. You can't laugh words. People don't laugh words. Just don't stick with said for the most part, and try to avoid adding an adverb like I constantly want to do. Use an action instead. If you have something, if you want to show that she's saying something strongly, have her stamp her foot or something. Any questions about that? All right. There is and there was. Often there is or there was is a sign of a sentence that it just often doesn't need to be there. Sometimes it does, but again, there is and there was and there were really need to prove themselves to you if you're going to let them stay. There wasn't anything that was out of place. It's an example sentence that I just edited into nothing was out of place. There were fiery currents that went around with immense speed. I just read in somebody's manuscript, just fiery currents went around with them. That could be fixed in other ways too, but just fiery currents went around. Is not pulling its weight. It's just sitting there being dead and boring. But once in a while you'll find a there was or there is that needs to be there, but just interrogate them, force them to pull their weight. That existed. Yeah, just a lot of times you'll find they're just junk phrases that have crept into your sentences. On many occasions, her friend's parents had taken her in and provided refuge from the chaos that existed under Mary's roof. Just the chaos under Mary's roof. It doesn't need to be there. I'm just mentioning these because they come up all the freaking time in my writing and in other people's writing that I edit. So I'm just trying to alert you to them. If you see a there is, next time you see a there is or that existed or whatever, you'll go, oh, should that be there? Suddenly, I always want to write suddenly. I just feel like it's weak though. There's got to be a better way to do it. Join me in the fight to find a better way to like convey it in some other way than by saying suddenly. Very, really. So these are words that in speech kind of work to intensify, which is what we want them to do. I'm very excited to be here, but they just don't have that effect in prose. In prose, they're just like, they just lay there and are an extra word and just kind of weaken it. If anything, they actually have the opposite effect. So really, really cut those out. Unless in dialogue, they might work a bit better. And somebody has a comment. Suddenly I realized I'm doing all these things. Yep. What about overuse of adjectives and adverbs in general? Guilty. Yeah, me too. Well, I mean, you don't want to pile on like too many adjectives on one poor little noun, but adjectives all right once in a while. Many people have bad feelings about adverbs. Elizabeth McCracken, who is a writer, a National Book Award winning writer whom I hugely admire. She's amazing. She says you should only use adverbs unexpectedly. Like you should only use them in some really surprising way. I'm not that disciplined. That's why I don't have a National Book Award. I like an adverb occasionally, but I do try to be conscious of, be conscious of your own flaws. If you know that you overuse adjectives and adverbs, then be kind of ruthless about it in your line edit. Take them out. Treasure them carefully over to the side. You're not going to hurt them in any way. They're safe over there. They can come back anytime. But then look at the sentence without them and say, okay, well, I didn't need that many. Your own favorite word, which leads me actually to start noticing your own favorite word. Mine is deeply, and sometimes I try to change it up by using profoundly. She feels that she felt it, this profoundly. Anyway, cut it. Thank you. Goodbye. With dialogue tags, do you think readers prefer to have each line identified with no? They do not prefer that. He says, she says. It's okay to go without dialogue tags occasionally. You want to be careful. I'm sure we've all done that thing of like having to go back up the dialogue chain to see, okay, if that was a he said, so this must be her, this must be him, this must be her. Don't make your reader do that. But also don't forget, it doesn't have to be a tag. It could be an action. Use an action that's often much more vivid anyway. She slammed her papers down. I don't like it. Then you don't need the tag, but we still know it's her. And you've worked some action in, which you want in your dialogue anyway. So yeah. Immense. Ellen, is that your favorite? Immense. Yeah. It's a good one. Oh, also if there's punctuation you tend to overuse, like sometimes I'll see exclamation points, which you want to be very judicious with. I think I overuse semicolons a bit, so I try to take those out. Just interrogate your own like dumb little habits. Look at your, you're looking at your writing on a kind of very small level, but the small things make a huge difference. I mean, I've gone back and forth over a semicolon or period. It matters, it really does. All right, the last thing is copy edit. And we're not really going to talk much about it because you know what it is: spelling, grammar, sentence flow, continuity. This is particularly where, besides saving my bad grammar, copy editors have saved me on continuity, where they'll put a note saying, hey, you said she ran outside without a sweater, but now you have her taking her sweater off, 15 pages later, like that kind of thing. It's really valuable. That's your third read, is your copy edit read. But if you're bad at spelling and grammar, this is the easiest one to outsource. A lot of great writers are terrible at grammar. I coach this one woman. She's an unbelievably good writer, and she's also unbelievably terrible at grammar and spelling and typos. And I finally asked her, what's going on? And she said she's really profoundly dyslexic. And I was like, oh, wow, but she doesn't need to worry because somebody else can fix all that. Somebody else can fix that. Nobody could create this amazing world and this like heart-pounding story and these like brilliant characters that she has. But anybody can fix the grammar and stuff, so don't worry about that. Dashes, I loved. Oh, that's what I really overuse. I totally overuse dashes, yes. Yeah, so copy editors. If you, I did my own copy edit because I'm kind of a nerd, but you can pay someone, you can trade with a friend who's good at that stuff, or you can, you know, beg somebody and promise to take them to dinner and stuff if you have a friend who's good at that stuff. Yeah, dashes, I know they're the best. The beta reader, I'd promised I was coming to this. Who is your beta reader? You could hire a professional, get a manuscript critique. If you do that, feel free to, I would even encourage you to ask for a sample, ask your friends for recommendations. It's, you know, it costs a bunch of money. You don't want to just trust yourself to some rando. Get some sense of what they like and whether they'll like your kind of stuff. If you don't, which I never got a professional manuscript critique myself with my first book. If you're going to go to a friend or acquaintance, that's a good plan. I suggest you choose somebody who's like somebody you know, that you like a lot, but they're not so close that they won't be honest. My husband would be a completely terrible beta reader because he is unable to tell me anything, but that everything I do is fantastic. So I'm like, maybe not a best friend, you know, somebody would really have trouble. Somebody that, you know, somebody who, this is really important, somebody who knows how to talk about writing. My beta readers for my first book were, I got a first chapter read from somebody I knew online, but it was a pretty close-knit online community, but I'd never met her. I have since, we've become good friends, but I just asked her to do a first chapter read for me. That's often easier if you're asking a friend, just a first chapter read. And because she was a writer, she was able to she was able to say kind things, so as not to crush me, but also to say, I'm completely confused, which was great information for me. And when I reread it, I thought, oh yeah, I could totally see why somebody who wasn't me would be totally confused, but somehow I could not see that until I talked to somebody. My second beta reader who read the whole thing is a friend of mine who teaches English she's at Colgate now, and she teaches mostly medieval stuff, but sometimes she teaches YA, and I was writing YA, so I got her to read it. But I mean, so if you find somebody who will know how to talk about writing and can say something besides I liked it or I didn't really get it, or, you know, somebody can give you more helpful criticism. Don't forget that you're asking somebody a huge freaking favor to be a beta reader. That's a big favor. You owe them something. Take them out to dinner, something. Questions? That's it. We have come to the end. Oh, let me, I'm gonna stop sharing this. And I'm going to try share Scrivener. So for those of you who are asking about Scrivener, this is a project I'm working on. The two things that I love most about Scrivener are this thing where you can break up your, like, here's my first chapter. It's called Ursa Minor. Here are the scenes. So I can break it up like this. And if I know, if I'm like, oh, here's the bedtime scene, I can work on that there, or I can just cut it, or I can, oh, you know what, the bedtime scene should totally go in chapter 2, and I can just move it around. It's so easy. I can color code things to see, like, day 2 has some problems since it's red. Before I was 2 is green, that means I finished it. The other thing I love about Scrivener is the research section, where you can bring in, well, the web page thing is kind of busted right now, but they're working on that. It's just Apple changed something. But anyway, usually you can pull in a whole web page and have it just sitting there. Right now I'd have to click on it and it would open in a browser. But you can pull in images. Like if I wanted to write, what does it look like from a train in northern Montana? I had this right here, so I could set it next to it and write. You can put sounds in. You can put in, I mean, just anything, any kind of media, PDFs, whole PDFs. It's just incredibly useful. And it also does a million other things, like it does split screens, as you were just seeing, but if you don't want a split screen, you don't have to have one. You just have one screen. You can also take it into, can't remember what they call it. It's something like, full screen mode, where you're just, nope, that's not what I wanted. Composition mode, yeah, here we go. So you don't have anything else to look at, so your screen is completely, you're blocking out everything else. There's a million things it does. There's an inspector over here where you can take snapshots before you change it, because you don't want to change your precious thing. So you can like go up here and take a snapshot of a scene before you make any edits to it, and then that whole scene, the original scene, will be saved for you. There's just a million things. I don't want to go on about Scrivener too much, but I very much recommend it. It's been marvelous for me. And now, questions. What if the beta reader isn't a writer, but an avid reader, period expert? Maybe some written guidelines. Maybe like tell them what you want to know. Like, I want to know any parts, like I would ask a beta reader, I want to know any parts that you find dull. I want to know if it was a period book, and they were a period expert, I'd say anything where you see where I'm off on the period. I want to know whether you care about the characters. I want to know if the climax is exciting. Like, give them a list of things that you especially care about. That would be a great start. And especially if there's someone who's a big reader who is used to talking about books, then that's good. As long as there's somebody who's used to talking about books and not just reading them and going, I loved it or I hated it. For individuals who are self-publishing, is it okay to go through 3 professional editing phases and in between doing 2 to 3 drafts? Sure. Yeah. I mean, that would be great if you are able to do that. That'd be wonderful. Yeah, to get a manuscript critique and maybe a line edit if you feel it. I mean, it depends on your writing. Like, I'm more confident about my writing than I am about my story. So I probably, I mean, it might have been a good idea for me to get a professional manuscript critique, but I probably did not need a line edit. So, I mean, it just depends on who you are, what you need. I'm a member of a really good writing group with people who are great at talking about writing. Yay, we read each other's novels piecemeal, chapter by chapter. Do you have an opinion about that? Sometimes seems like too much noise. Yeah, I bet. I fear crit groups for exactly that reason. But I mean, if they are a really great writing group, like if you trust them, if you know that they get what you're trying to do and they like the kind of thing you're trying to do and they're sympathetic with you and the things that they like are things that you like too, you know what I mean? Like all of those things. But it's a lot of different voices. It's like you go to Goodreads and I mean, you know, any book you choose will have 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews. I mean, how are you supposed to sort out among them? The only way is if you know them and decide whether there's somebody whose opinion you value. So, yeah, it's a lot of noise. One beta reader, maybe for the whole thing, who isn't in your crit group might be a good idea. Just my thought. But again, I've never been in a crit group, so. How many beta readers? Well, is there such a thing as too many opinions? And that's what we're talking about. At some point, it might become noise. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that you'd really need more than a couple if you had good ones, but there will be diminishing returns at some point. They're just going to be telling you totally different things. Do also be sure, like another reason my husband wouldn't be a good beta reader for me is because he doesn't read middle grade fiction. I mean, I do, and I know people who love, you know, like classic middle grade literature and stuff, but he doesn't. He's completely unfamiliar with it. He doesn't. So you want somebody who, you want to choose your beta readers carefully, I guess is what I'm saying. And make sure they're people whose opinions you respect, and don't get too many because you'll just start getting confused. Thank you. Thank you so much. Any more questions? Let's see. Oh, there's one. Revision control is fantastic in Scrivener. Absolutely. I really recommend, if you have any interest in it, just download a free thing. I think you get 30 days. They're really generous. And play around with it. It just, and the Scrivener tutorial. I hate tutorials and I never take tutorials. but the Scrivener tutorial is so good. You learn so much and it's so well done. So play around in the tutorial. I really recommend it. What are your thoughts on using a writing coach before the first draft is totally done? Yeah, I do that. I mean, I do writing coaching, and I hope it's helpful. I think it depends on what you need. The great thing about a writing coach is that it's totally tailored to what you need. Like, if what you need is somebody who's like, you know, tapping their little writing crop, you know, and saying, you owed me 10 pages by the end of this week. Where are they? That kind of thing. That's really useful. If you need someone who, like somebody else I coach, who just needs, he's so self-critical. You need someone to pull out the stuff me. I pull out all the things I love. Like, this is so good. This is so good. And then, you know, if there's things after working with him for like 8 months now, he's ready to hear, like, tell me the stuff that you don't like. And I'm like, it's not that I don't like it. There's parts that I'm confused by, or, you know. So it just, yeah, I think a writing coach can be very useful, especially in pushing you, because you're paying them. It pushes you to do it. You're paying them. They're saying, where's my pages you said you'd turn into me? You also, the other thing that's really valuable that I feel envious of my clients about is that they have somebody else who knows their story incredibly well. So they want to call me up and go like, and now I don't know this plot point. Like, you can't have that conversation with anybody else, because nobody else knows your story that well except your editor, if you like have an editor at a publishing house, or your coach. So, I mean, like everything, you want a good one, and there's money, so you have to know what you can afford and stuff. But yeah, I think a coach can be helpful. Where is the tutorial for Scrivener found? When you open up a new project in Scrivener, one of your choices will be tutorial, and then you can just, you know, it'll say like blank, or are you writing fiction, or is this a play? Because it has like some formats set up for you, but one of your choices will be tutorial, and then you just choose that, and it'll take you through. You can work through the tutorial. How do clients find me? I don't, website, like Googling, I guess. I work through Yellowbird editors. Also, I also do work on my own when people find me on their own, but I get more work through Yellowbird. And Sarah at Yellowbird has a bunch of different writers in different genres. So you might go to a service like hers, and Sarah's great. I really like her. So she's a very good writer and coach and editor herself. So, but something like that might work. How do you find a good writing coach? I mean, it's the same. There's services. And there's people advertising. I would look, if I were looking for a writing coach, I would want to make sure, I'd like to look at what they wrote, because hopefully they are a writer. And I would look at their writing a little bit to see if it was writing I admired, to see if like we were on the same wavelength writing wise. Like, I would not need a coach who just wanted to tell me, oh, you need to cut out all these, you know, descriptions and stuff, and just, you know, make it super punchy and fast paced, and not, you know, have all these feelings, which is a criticism my books get, but unfortunately that's like who I am and who the books are. I mean, other people really like the books that way. I just want to make sure that I had somebody who was like simpatico with my writing style. I don't know the ones on YouTube. Somebody's asking about coaches on YouTube. Are there any on YouTube? If there are, I do not know. It's such a personal thing, because what you want is somebody who's going to talk about your stuff, not just writing in general. Of course, that's what I'm doing right now, but for a coach, you want somebody who's like working with you. Is a writing coach similar to a mentor? I think a writing coach probably does more than a mentor, but I'm not entirely sure what a mentor does. But I would just think if somebody asked me to be their mentor, I would not think that I'd be checking in with them once a week and commenting on their pages and, you know, spending an hour on the phone with them and talking over their plot problems and stuff. A mentor sounds more like, yeah, let's have coffee once a month and tell me what you're doing. Big question. How do you know when you're done revising? I know that is a big question. Kind of, I mean, you're never really done. So at some point you just got to go. I think it's like such diminishing returns at this point. Look, that's how I stopped. Like, well, I mean, I could keep fooling with this and tweaking it, you know, forever. But I think at this point I'm just like futzing. So, but also then I wasn't so I guess I'm done, I thought, and then I sent it out to beta readers. They, oh, okay, yeah. So I made those revisions, and my agent had revisions, and my publisher had her giant revisions, and then the line edits came. So, I mean, you're done when it's published, basically. But you're done in terms of sending it out, which is probably what you know when you're just, when you're just futzing with it. How do you know when you're done? Yeah, that's when you should have had at least 1 or 2 beta readers, I think, before you send to an agent. At least, I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything. This is purely my opinion, but I would want some other eyes on it besides mine, just to make sure that I have not turned into like one of those, crazy people who never comes out of their house and has giant piles of manuscripts and drawings of little girls on the wall. You know what I mean? Maybe it makes no sense to anybody else. Like my first chapter made very little sense. I mean, it just was way overwritten, and I tried to jam too much in. But yeah, it's just nice to have somebody else's eyes on it at least once. Scrivener video on YouTube. Maybe, I mean, yeah, could be. Yeah, they do a lot of like YouTube. If you Google some Scrivener problem, you'll find YouTube solutions. Definitely, yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, my embodied writing seminar. I think I have done the embodied writing workshop before, but yeah, we should do a whole retreat. I should write a whole book. I'm obsessed with it. I really am. Any other questions? You guys have been great and very patient. We've got 3 minutes left. God, I thought I was going to be ending way early, but I guess I was hard to shut up. All right. Thank you. Thanks all you guys. And thank you, Sam, so much. Oh, good. Yeah, it should totally help with memoir, autobiography. It really should. It's the exact same techniques, any kind of narrative. Yeah, I'm still talking. I'll probably still be talking tomorrow night. I'll be talking to Ellen. All right. Good, you guys. I'm glad it was helpful, and I hope that the video is helpful too. Yeah, and check out Scrivener if you have any interest. Thank you, Sam. I'll let you wrap up now.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. This was amazing. It was fantastic. I'm sure you guys got a lot out of it as well. Thank you guys for being here.